Chapter 125. The Mid-Autumn Festival in the 62nd year of Qingyuan was the coldest Mid-Autumn Festival in Dawei. It had been raining since the morning, and the clouds were heavy. Looking at the situation, it seemed like it would rain for an entire day. Mount Lianxue was a chaotic mountain with many peaks. Because of the rain, the fog was thick and the mountain path was difficult to travel on. The carriage slowly passed on the mountain path. Even on such a difficult mountain path, Mount Lianxue was bustling all year round. This was because there was a spiritual temple on the mountain called Yuhua. Yuhua Temple was very popular. It was said that anyone who worshipped Buddha there could have their wishes fulfilled. This was an exaggeration, but Yuhua Temple had existed for hundreds of years. It was a true ancient temple. The officials and nobles of Shuo City were all willing to come here to pray during festivals to pray for their families to be safe and happy. The curtain of the carriage was lifted. Xiao family's eldest young mistress, Bai Rongwei, looked outside and said softly, "Soon we will reach Yuhua Temple in less than half an hour." "Are you hungry?" Xiao Jing asked warmly beside her. Bai Rongwei shook her head and looked at the carriage behind her. She was a little worried. "Huaijin." Xiao Jing sighed softly and didn't say anything. Xiao family knew that second young master Xiao didn't like the Mid-Autumn Festival. He even hated it. Xiao Zhongwu died on the battlefield, and it was the Mid-Autumn Festival soon. If he was still alive, he would have come back to spend the Mid-Autumn Festival with his family. Unfortunately, he died in the Battle of Mingshui before the Mid-Autumn Festival arrived. Xiao family's Mid-Autumn Festival banquet was prepared halfway and stopped abruptly. It didn't continue. Ever since the Xiao family couple passed away, Xiaoju wasn't in Shuojing every Mid-Autumn Festival. This year was his first Mid-Autumn Festival in Shuojing since he took over the Southern Prefecture Army. Xiao family also followed the rules when Madame Xiao was still alive. They burned incense and prayed at Mount Lianxue's Yuhua Temple during the Mid-Autumn Festival. However, they didn't expect the weather to be so bad today. Not only was there no sun, but the rain didn't stop. Just as Bai Rongwei had said, in less than half an hour, they could see the door of Yuhua Temple. A monk wearing a bamboo hat was sweeping the fallen leaves on the ground. When he saw the Xiao family's carriage arrive, he put down the broom in his hand and welcomed them into the temple. Because of the rain today, the mountain path was difficult to travel on. In the past, at this time of the year, Yuhua Temple would have been bustling with activity. However, today, other than the carriage of the Xiao family, there was only one other carriage parked outside the mountain gate. It was unknown which family it belonged to. Xiaoju followed them inside. The sky was dark. Although it was afternoon, it looked as if it was already evening. They followed the monks in the temple to have a vegetarian meal first, and then went to the Buddha hall to burn incense and pray for blessings. Bai Rongwei and Xiaoju went in first. When it was Xiaoju's turn, the monk in green reached out his hand to stop him. He said, "Almsgiver, you cannot go in." Bai Rongwei and Xiaojing turned around. Bai Rongwei asked, "Why?" "This is my younger brother. We went up the mountain to pray for blessings together." The monk in green put his palms together and bowed to her. He then turned to Xiaoju, lowered his head and said, "Benefactor, you have killed too many people. The Buddhist temple is a peaceful place, not a place for those whose hearts are stained with blood." They were startled. He had killed too many people. In the Battle of Gua City's Long Valley, 60,000 people were drowned. Wasn't that because he had killed too many people? Over the years, countless people from the southern barbarians had died at his hands. His heart was indeed stained with blood. "Master," Bai Rongwei was anxious. "Buddha saves all living beings. How can there be a distinction between high and low? Although his hands are stained with blood, he has saved many lives." Xiao Jing frowned. "Master, your words are too one-sided." The monk in green lowered his eyes and said nothing. "Master, please be tolerant," Bai Rongwei pleaded. "Our Xiao family is willing to pay more incense, as long as my brother can also enter the Buddha hall to pray." "There's no need." Someone's voice interrupted her. The young man in the brocade robe looked up, and his gaze fell on the Buddha hall. In the Buddha hall, a golden Buddha statue sat cross-legged. There was a fierce Vajra with angry eyes, and a serene Vairocana. From top to bottom, from far to near, they looked down at him with pity. The Sanskrit "nyao nyao." The sea of bitterness was boundless. And Buddha could not be saved. He should have expected this ending. He can't save me. Xiaoju raised the corner of her mouth. I don't want to look back. It was not impossible to sink into oblivion like this. He turned and walked out. I'll wait for you outside. Bai Rongwei and Xiaojing's shouts came from behind him. He frowned impatiently and turned to leave everything behind. He didn't know that after he left, the monk in green chanted the name of Buddha and whispered, "It may not be fated." Because it was raining, the road down the mountain was more slippery than the road up the mountain. The sky was dark, and it would be inappropriate to go down the mountain after praying. Tonight, they could only stay at Yuhua Temple. Sleeping outside on the Mid-Autumn Festival was also a helpless matter. The monk arranged a room for Bai Rongwei and the others and left. Bai Rongwei sighed. On the table was a moon ball specially made by Yuhua Temple. She said to Xiaojing, "Go and call Huaijin. Let's reluctantly spend the Mid-Autumn Festival here." Xiaojing went to the next room and knocked on the door. For a long time no one answered. He pushed the door and entered. The room was empty. Xiaoju was not in the room. He looked at the courtyard of the temple. The rain washed the stone slabs clean. It was raining. Where did Xiaoju go? In the backyard of Yuhua Temple, there was an ancient tree. Yuhua Temple had been here since it was built. No one knew how many hundreds of years it had lived. The ancient tree had a spirit. Its branches and leaves were luxuriant. The believers who came to offer incense called it the immortal tree. The immortal tree was hung with red silk ribbons. Some prayed for good grades, and some prayed for good weather. The red silk covered the branches. When it rained, there was no shelter outside. The hanging prayer strips were wet and stuck to the branches as if they were covered with a layer of red silk. The young man holding the umbrella stopped. A piece of red cloth fell on the ground. There was a yellow tassel on it. Probably the rain was too heavy and the red silk was blown down. Xiaoju paused and bent down to pick up the red silk. Each piece of red silk was written with the wish of the person who hung it. He looked down. The one on the left was wet from the rain. The ink was so thick that he could not see its original appearance. The one on the right was still clear. The words were crooked, like the scribbles of a 3-year-old child. The word "look" was written on it. Look? Look at what? It was strange. He was tall. He tied the strange red silk back to the tree. He deliberately found a place where the leaves were the most luxuriant. This way, it would not be soaked easily by the rain. After doing all this, he put the umbrella aside again. The sachet on his waist was exposed because of his movements. He was stunned. The sachet was very old. It was a dark green bag with a black python embroidered on it with gold thread. It was majestic, flexible, and exquisite. However, too much time had passed. The stitches were worn out, and the python pattern was not as vivid as before. The sachet was empty, as if there was nothing inside. He stroked the sachet with his fingertips. Something sank in his eyes. The youths in the Xianchang gymnasium all knew that Xiaoju had a sachet with him since he was young. The more mischievous ones like Lin Shuanghe had always been curious about what kind of treasure was inside. Later, when he had the opportunity to open it, he found that it was a bag full of osmanthus candy. At that time, second young master Xiao was ridiculed. He liked to eat sweet things so much that he even carried them with him to school. Little did he know that this was made for him by Madame Xiao when she was alive. After Madame Xiao died, he still carried this sachet. However, there was no longer any candy inside. There was only one old, blackened, and inedible osmanthus candy. Xiaoju left the mountain at the age of 15 and entered the Xianchang gymnasium. He had learned everything he needed to learn in the early years of the mountain. Therefore, he only needed to see it once to remember the lessons taught by his teacher. He slept in between classes all day long. Often he easily got first place. His teacher liked him, and his classmates envied him. In the eyes of outsiders, it was unknown how much good karma he had accumulated in his previous life to be able to reincarnate like this. However, Xiao Zhongwu was extremely strict with him. He was born lazy. Originally, when he was on the mountain, other than his teacher, there was no one to discipline him. Xiao Zhongwu also could not see him. After he left the mountain, his classmates often invited him to the banquet today and the pear garden tomorrow. They were all 14 or 15 years old youths, so there was no reason for him not to go. Although most of the time, he just sat lazily at the side and watched, or simply slept. However, in Xiao Zhongwu's eyes, he felt that this child was willing to degenerate and idle around. Xiao Zhongwu reprimanded him, and used the family law to confiscate his monthly allowance. He punished him to copy books and practice martial arts. He did everything he was told. However, as a youth, arrogance and unruliness were engraved in his bones. How could he really accept it? The more he calmly accepted his punishment, the angrier Xiao Zhongwu became. Later on, he quarreled with Xiao Zhongwu. Xiao Ju raised his eyebrows. What you wanted me to do, I did it. Since you only want to see the results are already out. Father, what are you feeling awkward about? The corner of the youth's mouth curved into a mocking smile. In an instant, Xiao Zhongwu's hand that was holding the whip stopped. Xiao Ju chuckled and turned to leave. That was the last time he saw Xiao Zhongwu alive. The next day, Xiao Zhongwu led the troops to the southern barbarians. Not long after, he died in the Battle of Mingshui. When the news of the coffin being transported back to the capital, Madame Xiao was in the kitchen making osmanthus candy for Xiao Ju. When she heard the news, a plate of osmanthus candy was knocked over and fell to the ground, covered in dust. The trusted aide who was lucky enough to survive knelt in front of Madame Xiao and cried. We originally planned to go to Mingshui 2 days earlier, but the general said that Mingshui is rich in ironware. He wanted to make a sword for second young master. Before leaving, he argued with second young master and hurt second young master's feelings. He hoped that this sword would let second young master understand his painstaking efforts. I didn't expect. Madame Zhao's heart-wrenching cries could be heard in the house. She rushed forward and hit Xiao Ju. She cried and scolded. Why are you angry with him? Why? If you weren't angry with him, he wouldn't have stayed in Mingshui. He wouldn't have been ambushed and he wouldn't have died. He endured this terrible accusation and let the woman's soft fists fall on his body. He didn't say a word. How could it be? His father, that resolute and strict man, didn't show any mercy when he waved the whip. How could a man who left his child in a strange mountain and didn't come back once a year die? He was cold and ruthless, righteous. How could he die? The terrible accusation continued. It's you who killed him. It's you who killed your father. He couldn't bear it and pushed his mother away. I didn't. It's not me. The woman was pushed away by him and looked at him blankly. Unable to bear her desperate look, Xiao Ju turned and ran out. He didn't know where he should go, nor did he know who he should talk to. It had only been a year since he went down the mountain and returned to Shuajing. In a year, he didn't even know everyone in Xiao Mansion. He didn't even learn how to get along with his family. It was already like this. When people are in extreme pain, they don't cry. He didn't feel the pain now, he was just confused. It was as if he had just heard an impossible joke and did not know how to react. He just felt that his steps were heavy and he didn't dare to go forward. He couldn't face his mother's desperate and mournful eyes. Many years later, Xiao Ju would think that if he hadn't been so timid and went back to the house, everything that happened later wouldn't have happened. But there were no ifs. When he went back, it was already night time. Xiao Jing and Bai Rongwei had already come back. Their eyes were red and swollen, as if they had cried. Xiao Jing, who was always weak and polite, rushed up and punched him. She grabbed his collar and shouted with red eyes. Where did you go? Why weren't you in the mansion? Why weren't you with mother? He suddenly felt a wave of disgust and self-mockery. He pulled the corner of his mouth. You and I are both sons. Why don't you ask yourself? You. Huaijin, Bai Rongwei sobbed. Mother is gone. His smile froze. Mother is gone. Xiao Jing let go and took 2 steps back. She covered her face and sobbed. Madame Zhao's life was as weak as a flower that had never experienced wind and rain. When Xiao Zhongwu was alive, she was dissatisfied with him and quarreled with him every few days. They were like a resentful couple. Xiao Zhongwu died, and the flower withered. Without any nutrients, it followed him. She left so decisively that she didn't even think about what her 2 sons would do if they stayed in Shuajing. Xiao family. The moment she lost Xiao Zhongwu, her life no longer had any meaning. So she used a piece of white silk to end her life. Before she died, the last words she said to Xiao Ju were, You killed him. You killed your father. These words would become an eternal nightmare for Xiaoju. Years later, he would often wake up in the middle of the night, unable to sleep. He would never be able to get rid of it. Xiao Zhongwu and Madame Xiao were buried together. A few days ago, in preparation for the Mid-Autumn Festival, the lanterns and canvases were removed and replaced with white lanterns. Xiao Zhongwu's death brought more than just a blow to the Xiao family. Xiao Jing had suffered many open and covert attacks in the imperial court, so Xiao Ju had to bear the same burden behind his back. The Nanfu soldiers, the Xiao family, and the unwarranted blame for the Battle of Mingshui. He still didn't shed a single tear. He did things numbly and made arrangements. The time he could sleep was getting shorter and shorter. The days he returned to the Fu were getting later and later. That night, Xiao Ju returned to the Fu late. After Xiao Zhongwu's death, most of the servants in the Fu were dismissed. Other than his personal bodyguards, he didn't need any servants. He felt hungry and realized that he hadn't eaten for a whole day. It was too late. There was no need to trouble Bai Rongwei. Xiao Ju went to the kitchen to see if there was any leftover food. The stove was cold, and there wasn't much food in the kitchen. Everyone was busy these days and didn't have the heart to eat. He found 2 steamed buns and a bowl of pickled vegetables. The light was so weak that it looked like it was going to go out. There were no stools in the kitchen. The youth was very tired. He found a corner by the wall and sat down. Suddenly, he saw an osmanthus candy at the end of the long table, in the corner of the wall. When the news of Xiao Zhongwu's death came, Madame Xiao was making osmanthus candy for Xiao Ju. When she heard the news, the plate of osmanthus candy was knocked over. Later, the servants cleaned it up and there was nothing left. There was one that had slipped through the net. It was lying quietly in the corner, covered in dust. He crawled over and carefully picked up the osmanthus candy. He brushed the dust off it. The candy smelled faintly of osmanthus. It was as sweet as always. Madame Xiao always made osmanthus candy very sweet. It was so sweet that it hurt people. He didn't eat sweet things. But this was the last piece of candy he got in the human world. There was still candy paper left in the sachet. He wrapped the candy and put it back in the sachet. He picked up the bowl and the steamed bun. Second young master Xiao had always been noble. He was particular about cleanliness. But now he didn't care about his manners and sat down to eat. He hadn't changed his clothes for 2 days. His stomach hadn't eaten a single grain of rice. He no longer looked as beautiful and charming as he did in the past. The youth leaned against the wall and sat with his head raised. He slowly chewed on the steamed bun. As he ate, he laughed at himself. There seemed to be a bright light in his eyes, like the embers of the stars in the long night. It disappeared quickly. Time flew, leaving no trace. The past seemed to be a memory from his previous life. Those complicated emotions intertwined and finally turned into a nonchalant smile. It wasn't a hurdle that couldn't be crossed. He looked at the sachet in his hand in a daze. He didn't know what to think. After a while, he let go and continued to walk forward. Young master. Fei Nu came from behind. He took the umbrella and held it for Xiao Ju. He asked, "Are we going back to the temple now?" "Let's go," Xiao Ju said. "Let's get some fresh air." The last trace of light disappeared. Mount Lianxue was completely dark. Thick fog filled the air. It was like an illusion in the mountains. Almost no one would leave on a night like this. The rain fell along the umbrella. It wasn't heavy, but it was dense. It was like a layer of cold gauze, covering the mountains. "I don't know when this rain will stop," Fei Nu murmured. Most of the mid-autumn nights were sunny. It was rare to see a night like this. Xiao Ju looked up. The night was dark and he couldn't see the end. He said, "There is no moon tonight." Without the moon, people wouldn't be round. The mountain forest road was muddy. Other than the sound of the rain, nothing could be heard. The further they walked, the more lush the trees were. They couldn't see clearly. Suddenly, there was a rustling sound in front of them. Fei Nu paused and reminded, "Young master." Xiao Ju shook his head, indicating that he had heard it. It was so late and it was raining. Who would be here? Fei Nu poked the lantern in his hand forward. The rain was heavy. There was a figure standing under a tree. At first he could only see a blurry shadow. It was probably a woman. He didn't know what she was doing. He took 2 steps forward and looked again. He saw that the woman was standing on a rock. Her hands were tugging at something long, and she was pulling it down. It was tied to the tree. It was a piece of white silk. This woman was seeking death. Chapter 126. Hien had never thought that there would be such a difficult time in life. It was so difficult that she couldn't even take a step forward. She hadn't seen the moon in a long time. Since she lost her sight, she had been living in a daze. Su Zhiheng had comforted her, saying that he would always be by her side. Hien had also smiled and agreed. However, no matter how calm she appeared, her heart was still at a loss and fearful. She had faced many difficulties in her life. Most of the time, she had stood up with a strong will and told herself that everything would be fine after she took this step. Unconsciously, when she looked back, she had already taken many steps. This was the only step she couldn't take, and she didn't know how to take it. Hien was no longer General Fei Hong. She had become young Mistress Su, and she was just an ordinary woman. An ordinary woman suddenly lost her sight. Although her husband still treated her well, it was like a flower in the water, with a kind of illusory perfunctory. She couldn't feel it. On Chinese Valentine's Day, she sat in the Fu until late at night, but Su Zhiheng didn't return. She originally thought that it was because of some matters at court. She only found out the next day that Su Zhiheng had accompanied He Wanru to the temple fair. She groped her way to the window in the room and sat down, quietly listening to the servant girls outside chatting. Yesterday, Master and Madam quarreled. They quarreled so much that even Master knew. Master is in a bad mood, but we servants are unlucky. Isn't it all because of that person in the East Courtyard? If you ask me, I think Master is too soft-hearted. That person in the East Courtyard is now blind. How can our young mistress be blind? It'll be a joke. Madam even cancelled the banquet outside these days, because she didn't want others to ask. A servant girl couldn't stand it and spoke up for her. Young mistress wasn't born blind. She's already very pitiful for suddenly becoming like this. Pitiful? What's so pitiful about her? Even if she's blind, she can stay in the Fu and be served every day. At least she doesn't lack food and clothing. What's the difference between her and that pet? The pitiful one is Master. At such a young age, he has to be tied up with this blind person for the rest of his life. Our Master is talented and unparalleled. What kind of woman can't he find? Why does he have to find someone like this? Yes, I'm the pitiful one. Words like these were like sharp hooks that drilled into her heart, making her bleed profusely. That night, she sat in her room and waited for Su Zhiheng to come back. She said to him, "Let's divorce." Su Zhiheng was startled and asked warmly, "Why do you say that? Or you can divorce me." She didn't like to beat around the bush, so she spoke the truth. "Now that I can't see, there's no need for me to burden you. You and I are husband and wife." Su Zhiheng held her hand and said, "Don't talk about this anymore. Rest early." He changed the subject, but did not deny Hien's claim of being a burden. Hien's heart sank. Every day after that, she lived a life of being provided with clothes and food, and often heard the servants in the residence secretly ridiculing her. Madame Su's words were full of sarcasm, implying that Hien was a burden to the Su family. Su Zhiheng still treated her gently, but other than that, there was nothing else. Hien felt very tired. She seemed to be walking on a dark road in the middle of the night, with no passers-by. She couldn't see the light in front of her, and there was no place to retreat behind her. She didn't know when she would reach the end and end this torturous life. A few days before the Mid-Autumn Festival, she said to Su Zhiheng, "I know Yuhua Temple on Mount Lianshan. There's an immortal tree in the temple that's very spiritual. During the Mid-Autumn Festival, can we go to the mountains? I want to hang silk on the tree and make a wish. Maybe my eyes can be cured." Since she lost her sight, she almost never asked for anything from Su Zhiheng. Su Zhiheng was stunned for a moment, but he finally agreed. He said, "Okay." Perhaps it was because when one was unlucky, even drinking cold water would get stuck in one's teeth. In previous years, the Mid-Autumn Festival was sunny, but this year, it rained for days. When the carriage reached the mountain, the sky was unbelievably gloomy. It was impossible to go down the mountain that afternoon. Perhaps they would have to stay on the mountain for one more night. Su Zhiheng helped her to the temple. A monk stuffed a piece of red silk into her hand and told her the location of the immortal tree behind the temple. He Yan stroked the red silk and thanked the monk. The monk clasped his hands and said kindly, "If you suffer 100,000 calamities, your work will not perish. When the time comes, karma will reap what you sow." She didn't understand Buddhist scriptures. She wanted to ask again, but the monk had already walked far away. It was raining. Su Zhiheng accompanied He Yan to the side of the immortal tree. There were stone tables and stone stools beside the immortal tree for the pilgrims who usually came to hang the red silk to write. Su Zhiheng laid out the red silk for her and stuffed a brush into her hand. He said, "Write." He Yan wrote slowly based on her feelings. "I hope I can still see the moon." He didn't need to think to know that the handwriting must be crooked and terrible. After she finished writing, she carefully handed the red silk to Su Zhiheng. Su Zhiheng helped her hang the immortal tree. He Yan couldn't see anything, so she didn't see it. Her husband stood up and casually hung the red silk on a branch by his elbow. He didn't even bother to tie the red silk properly, and just hung it casually. There was no shelter on the tree. After a short while the red silk was soaked by the rain. The handwriting on it quickly became a blurry ink stain. It was difficult to see what was written. "Let's go." Su Zhiheng came over and helped He Yan leave. Boom! A small clap of thunder resounded. Suddenly, a gust of cold wind blew, causing the tree branches to rustle. The red silk that was not tied properly was blown off by the wind. It smashed into the puddles of water, splashing mud all over. He Yan seemed to feel something and asked worriedly, "The wind is so strong. Won't it blow the silk away?" "How could it?" Su Zhiheng smiled and comforted her. "It's tied very tightly." After he said that, he stepped over the red silk as if he didn't see it. The rain showed no signs of stopping. They had no choice but to stay in the mountains for the night. Su Zhiheng went to find the masters of Yuhua Temple to discuss the sutras. It was already evening. He Yan sat quietly in the room with the lights on. At this time, she should have gone to bed and rested. As a blind person, there was nothing she could do except sleep and eat. But tonight, the rain was sparse and she couldn't sleep. She didn't know what time it was. She called the maids' names twice, but no one answered. She leaned against the wall and slowly walked out, intending to call someone. When she reached the door, she heard two maids talking. "I think I heard young mistress calling for someone." "Really? Don't worry about it. It's so late. What's the point of calling for someone? You're already a blind person, yet you're still making trouble. Do you really think you're young mistress?" He Yan was startled when she heard this. These two maids weren't her personal maids. They were Su Zhiheng's servants. Usually, they were gentle. Because of her relationship with Su Zhiheng, they had always treated her with respect. She didn't know that they were talking about her like this in private. If she didn't want to go up the mountain today, we wouldn't have to spend the Mid-Autumn Festival here. It's still raining outside. It's really unlucky. Sir is just too kind. He's not angry even with such a burden. It's not like you don't know Sir's temperament. On the surface, he's not angry, but in his heart, he's always unhappy. Our Su family has become a joke in the capital. Sir has always been proud and arrogant. Thinking about it, his heart must be very uncomfortable. If I were her, I'd hang myself with a rope so that I won't be a burden to others. You can't say such nonsense. The maids who spoke disagreed. You're like an animal. Every day, you wait for someone to feed you. After eating, you sleep. You're always being served. You can't leave the residence, and you can't see anyone. Life is boring. It's okay for 1 or 2 years, but if you have to live like this for the rest of your life, what's the point of living? It's better to die early and be free. Perhaps you'll be able to see the rest of your life if you're reincarnated. Stop talking. There's hot water outside. Let's go get some hot water first. The sound of footsteps gradually faded away. He Yan slowly slid down to sit with her back to the door. Yes, 1 or 2 years was fine, but if she had to live like this for the rest of her life, what was the point of living? The maids in the master's room didn't dare to trample on whoever the master thought highly of. Since these two people could talk about her as if nothing had happened, it was clear that Su Zhiheng wasn't as free of regrets in the room as he was in front of her. However, in this world, How many people could be free of regrets? Ian didn't know if the lights in the room were on or not. To her, it was all the same. All of a sudden, he felt like he had lost all hope. When she was young, she practiced martial arts. When she was young, she went to school. Later on, she went to the battlefield and fought for military merits. She had been working for others for the rest of her life. With great difficulty, she finally took off her mask. She thought that she could start all over again, but at this time, she fell into darkness again. Moreover, she would be trapped in a four-corner house for the rest of her life. She had to be followed every step she took. A person's despair wasn't accumulated overnight. Little by little, the little things in daily life nibbled away at his passion. His passion was slowly being exhausted. Disappointment and heaviness weighed down on him, and the last straw fell gently. With a splash, hope sank to the bottom of the water. Despair covered the sky and covered the earth. She groped around and slowly stood up. There was a belt left over from her clothes in the room. She randomly grabbed her outer garment and put it on. She picked up the bamboo pole she used when she was blind and shakily went out the door. There were few people in the mountain temple. Because it was dark and raining outside, the monks had already entered the temple hall. She walked around randomly, and unexpectedly didn't bump into anyone. Fortunately, when she was young, she had cultivated the habit of memorizing the road. She still remembered that when she went up the mountain, Su Jiheng told her that there was a dense forest near the mountain stream not far from the temple. The waterfall was like pearls and jade falling on a plate. It was magnificent and strangely beautiful. There were mountains, water, and trees. It was pretty good. Unfortunately, it was raining tonight and there was no moon, which she liked. It was inconvenient for a blind person to go out, especially on a muddy mountain road. She didn't know how many times she fell and how many times she was tripped by Shirtu. She only felt that her clothes were wet from head to toe and her hair was messy. In the end, she was gasping for breath and didn't know where she was. She fell in front of a tree and hit her head on the trunk. Ian reached out and groped around. This tree was very big. It should be an old tree. She probably couldn't find a dense forest with a waterfall. Here was also fine. She had never cared much about external objects. It took her a long time to move to a piece of Shirtu. Ian was exhausted. He sat down on the Shirtu. The rain was a little lighter, and it hit her body densely. The young woman looked up at the sky, as if she could see the moon. Only the rain slid down her cheeks. She wiped the water off her face. Don't be a boat on the river. Don't be a moon on the river. The boat carries people and leaves. The moon shines on people and leaves. She didn't have anything to miss about this world. The only thing she missed was that there was no moon tonight. Ian slowly stood up and touched the cloth beside her. The cloth was tied tightly. She pulled it down. It was very stable. It shouldn't break. She kicked the Shirtu away. The cloth that was twisted into a rope broke with a sound. Ian was caught off guard and fell to the ground. The mud on the ground splashed on her. She was stunned for a moment. Suddenly, she understood that the cloth was broken. It was broken? For a moment, she couldn't suppress the inexplicable grievance and sorrow in her heart. She choked for a moment, then sobbed softly. Then she lay on the ground and cried loudly. Ian rarely shed tears. As a general, shedding tears would affect morale. On the battlefield, she always had to maintain her confident and energetic appearance, as if nothing could affect her judgment. When she was no longer a general, she would feel that she was being unreasonable if she wanted to cry again. But there were always times when people were weak. When she was neglected, she could endure it. When she was blind, she could endure it. When she heard the taunts of the maidservants, she could endure it. When her mother-in-law hinted that she would be a burden, she could endure it. But if she couldn't even kill herself, and even the cloth was about to break, she couldn't endure it. Her tears were hot. Big drops of tears flowed down her cheeks and fell into the mud under her body. She couldn't tell which was the rain and which was the tears. She cried heartbreakingly. Suddenly, she heard a strange voice. It was a man's voice. In the wind and rain, his voice was deep and pleasant. With a hint of impatience, he asked, "Why are you crying?" Yan's crying stopped abruptly. Xiao Ju looked at the woman in front of her. This was a woman who was seeking death. She was in a sorry state from head to toe. She was wearing a white inner robe, but she was wearing a red outer robe. Even the belt of the outer robe was tied incorrectly. Perhaps she had fallen many times on the road. But the robe had several holes. Her face was also extremely dirty. She looked like a cat with mud everywhere. Xiaoju loved cleanliness. She felt that this scene was very offensive. Finally, she couldn't help but take out a white handkerchief and hand it over. The woman didn't take it. She made a defensive posture and asked, "Who are you?" He was surprised for a moment. He noticed that the other party's eyes were wandering. After thinking for a moment, he put away the handkerchief and squatted down to ask, "You can't see?" The woman was stunned for a moment. She replied fiercely, "Yes, I'm blind." She said it with arrogance. Fei Nu stood behind him and was about to step forward. Xiaoju gently shook his head at him. He unclenched her fists vigilantly. She just wanted to quietly hang herself. Now the cloth was broken and a stranger saw her embarrassing situation. Why did the heavens always treat her so unexpectedly? Xiaoju looked at her indifferently and bent down to pick up the throwing knife on the ground. Just now, he had used this knife to break the cloth on the tree. "What do you want?" Ian asked. Xiaoju replied, "I'm just passing by." He really wasn't a good person who liked to meddle in other people's business. He had already done his best to go to this extent. Xiaoju stood up and turned to leave. After a few steps, Fei Nu came closer and whispered, "Today Yuhua Temple only has Hanlin scholar Su Zhiheng and his wife. This woman should be Hiyan, young mistress Su who was blind a few days ago." "Hiyan?" He raised his eyebrows. "He Rufei's younger sister?" Xiaoju turned around to look. The woman had already found the broken piece of cloth. The cloth was not long, but it could still be used after it was broken into two. First, she used half of the cloth to draw a few lines around her neck. After confirming that it could still be used, she shakily tied a knot with the cloth. She actually wanted to hang herself again. Xiaoju was a little incredulous and wanted to laugh. This kind of stubbornness bordering on stupidity was very similar to her cousin. Most people seek death out of a moment of anger. They hang themselves and jump off a cliff. When the moment comes, most people will regret it, but it's too late. Since this woman had already tasted death, she wouldn't seek death again. He didn't expect her to be so stubborn. Even if the rope was broken, she still wanted to continue. He shouldn't have cared. No one could stop a person who was determined to die. But Xiaoju suddenly remembered many years ago. On a mid-autumn night like this, a young man anxiously returned home, only to find his mother's cold corpse. The scene in front of him seemed to overlap with the past. For a moment he couldn't tell which night it was. Fei Nu was behind him, looking at him in confusion. Xiaoju took a deep breath and finally compromised. He walked to the woman's side and asked, "Why do you want to die?" Ian was shocked. She clearly heard the other party's footsteps leaving. Why did she suddenly turn back? She had been forced to compromise her whole life and was manipulated by others. Now that she was at her end, she didn't want to think about others. This person's meddling in other people's business made her unhappy, so she vented all her anger on him. She almost shouted back, "It's none of your business." The young man grabbed her arm and pulled her up from the ground. Ian was shocked. She struggled for a bit, but she was already stumbling and didn't have any strength left. She couldn't see, so she was dragged along. After taking 2 steps, she was thrown down and sat on the ground. The ground was soft. It was a patch of grass. That person seemed to be standing beside her. He bent over and said in a cold voice, "Why do you want to die?" Ian was also angry. She shouted, "I said it's none of your business. There's no moon today, so I want to die. The mountain road is too slippery, so I want to die. Even the rope I tied will break, so I want to die. I met a meddlesome person like you here, so I want to die. Is that enough?" She shouted fiercely, but tears rolled down her cheeks. She was originally an aggressive tiger, but now she looked more like a wet wild cat with nowhere to go. Fei Nu stood nervously behind Xiaoju. It was rare for second young master Xiao to be patient enough to meddle in other people's business. This woman was also so fierce. It was even rarer. After Hiyan shouted, she suddenly felt something wipe her face. It was soft and dense like the clouds in spring. Indifferent, with a trace of imperceptible warmth, a comforting voice sounded. If you really want to be strong, so what if you're blind? Even if you're blind, you can be the most different one among the blind. Her anger came to an abrupt end. All of his wretched and weak state had nowhere to hide, completely exposed in front of everyone. It's nothing. Although I can't see, I can still hear. You're with me, so it's okay. She smiled and said to Su Jiheng, how could it be okay? How could it be okay? At night, she used her fingers to trace her eyes over and over again, praying for God's mercy so that she could see again the next day. Those nights where she tossed and turned, those nights where she gritted her teeth and told herself it was okay. Those nights where she pretended as if nothing had happened, they didn't know. They didn't understand anything. But a stranger passing by understood. She couldn't cry, couldn't be seen as weak, couldn't complain, couldn't lose her temper. It had been too long, so long that these emotions were like silkworms spinning silk, wrapping her layer by layer into a strong cocoon. She sat alone in the cocoon, isolated from the outside world. Hien outside the cocoon was gentle, optimistic, and always thinking of others with a smile. Hien inside the cocoon was painful, wronged, and suppressed his cries for help. For so many years from Hirufei to Hien, she had never taken off her mask. Until tonight, a stranger passing by saw through everything. He took off her mask and saw her tears. All her defenses and vigilance were instantly deflated. She slowly lowered her head, and her tears fell even bigger. He originally thought that after saying this sentence, Hien would stop crying, but he didn't expect her to cry even louder. The rain showed no signs of stopping, and the grass below was already wet. Xiao Ju hooked his finger, and Fei Nu stepped forward. He took the umbrella in Fei Nu's hand and held it over Hien's head. Hien still didn't stop crying. He had never seen such a fierce, bad-tempered woman who could cry so much. It was hard to imagine that Hirufei, who was so silly and happy, would have such a different sister. Xiao Ju was dumbfounded by her crying. He couldn't bear it anymore and finally said, "Don't cry." "Why can't I cry?" She was like an ignorant wild cat, showing her claws to the person who fed her. Her voice was already hoarse, but she still wanted to argue. "Not only will I cry, I will also seek death. I'm already like this. What's the point of living?" Sob, 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 sob. Xiao Ju. He had never coaxed a woman before, and this was the result of his first attempt? Why was she so stubborn? "What do I have to do to make you stop crying?" He suppressed his anger. "So that you won't continue to hang yourself." Hien sobbed and sobbed. Now that she was here, she no longer had any thoughts of seeking death. Sometimes people were just stuck at a juncture. If it was over, it was over. If it couldn't be over, it couldn't be over. This passerby appeared out of nowhere, and his words were not very warm, but she didn't want to die. She said, "If you can give me a piece of candy now, I won't seek death." When she was young, she liked to eat sweet things. However, after she was 5 years old, Madam He kept a very strict watch on her. She was afraid that she would be exposed, so she had to get rid of her sweet habit. Later she joined the army. There were no sweet candies in the army, only coarse dry biscuits. After she got married, Hien saw that Hiwanru was sick. Su Jiheng went to visit her, and specially brought her a small box of candied plums. When Hiwanru took a sip of medicine, Su Jiheng stuffed a piece of candied plum into her mouth. Hien saw this when he passed by the window. For a moment, jealousy rose in his heart. He didn't know if he was envious that Su Jiheng was so good to Hiwanru, or that Hiwanru could get a lot of sweetness after suffering a little. Hien had never been willful, but tonight he didn't know why, but he seemed to want to show his willfulness to the extreme in front of this stranger. The young man was slightly startled. He turned his head to look at the person beside him. The woman's face was carelessly wiped a few times with a handkerchief. Her cheeks were still muddy. Her eyes were slightly red and swollen, but they were surprisingly bright. Her stubborn expression was familiar. It was very similar to a clumsy teenager. He was silent for a moment. His slender fingertips reached for the sachet at his waist. Fei Nu was shocked. He held the dark blue sachet in his hand. He pinched the bottom of the sachet, and poured out a piece of osmanthus candy wrapped in candy paper. It had been too long. The candy paper and the candy had been stuck together. It was so dark that it was impossible to see its original appearance. After Madame Xiao died, Xiao Ju carried the last piece of osmanthus candy with him. Over the years, this candy had accompanied him through many difficult times. When he couldn't hold on anymore, he looked at this candy. It seemed that he could taste a little sweetness in the world. This was the only sweetness in his life. Now he was going to give it to a woman who couldn't stop crying and wanted to die. He thought that he didn't need candy in his life. So be it. He Yin felt something stuffed into her hand. She subconsciously clenched it and wanted to peel it off. You can't eat it. A man's voice sounded beside her. What? She said. Are you lying to me? You randomly found a piece of shirt and told me that it's candy? He Yin heard the other person's voice. There was a hint of disappointment in his voice. This is the last piece of candy left in the world. It's very sweet, but you can't eat it. Are you crazy? He Yin never knew that she was such a greedy person. She thought that this person must have a good temper and a soft heart to tolerate her nonsense again and again. She said, It's very sweet, but you can't eat it. There's only one in the world. Is this a gift from His Majesty? She didn't see that the handsome young man sitting beside her lowered his head and smiled indifferently. He said, It's more precious than a gift from His Majesty. He Yin quickly tore off the candy paper and stuffed it into her mouth when the other person wasn't paying attention. He was stunned. I've already eaten it. I swallowed it. He Yin acted shamelessly. The other person didn't answer. This was the first piece of candy she had received in her life. The taste of the candy was very strange. It was mixed with her tears. It was so bitter. She thought, so be it. Has the rain stopped? She didn't feel the rain falling on her body. She reached out and scratched her body as she asked the person beside her. The young man beside her had been kneeling on one knee, holding an umbrella for her. The umbrella was not big. More than half of his body was wet. The side of his face was well defined, and his eyelashes were covered with fine droplets of water. His eyes were enshrouded with a faint layer of gentleness. It stopped. Is there a moon in the sky? The sky was dark, and there was not a single star. Where did the moon come from? He answered, Yes. What is it like outside? The bright moon is like frost, the wind is like water, and the scenery is endless. He Yin smiled for the first time that night. It's so nice. She heard the person beside her ask, Don't you want to die? I don't want to. If you don't want to die, then go home. He said and pulled He Yin up. He Yin subconsciously wanted to grab his hand, but that slender hand with distinct joints had already let go very quickly. Xiao Ju walked in front of Fei Nu and whispered, Send him to sister-in-law's room and let her send him back. I'm a man, so it's inconvenient for me to appear. Fei Nu complied. When he was about to leave, he suddenly added, Warn Su Jiheng, tell him not to go too far. This meant that he was going to stand up for He Yin. Fei Nu came over to support He Yin. He Yin seemed to feel that the other person was about to leave. She reached out in the person's direction and said, Thank you. Who are you? He didn't speak. He Yin only had time to grab the corner of a sleeve. It slipped from her hand. It was cold and soft like the moonlight. Even though she couldn't see anything, she vaguely saw light. It was warm and cold, blazing and bright. It didn't blame her at all. It was patient and tolerant. It saw through all her secrets and wrapped her up gently. In the end, she didn't know who the other person was. That was the worst mid-autumn festival that He Yin had ever experienced. She was covered in mud, her hair was unkempt, and her face was dirty. She was only a hair's breadth away from despair. Fortunately, the moon was always by her side. There was no moon that night, but the moonlight was really beautiful. The thin and soft light had warmed her for many years. Chapter 127. Above the river, the moonlight was thousands of miles away, and it was cold enough to penetrate one's clothes. White light leaked through the gaps between the branches, like snow that had not yet melted. He Yin turned her head and looked at the person opposite her. The young man's eyes were like autumn water, moving even without adding color. His side profile was angular, heroic and lazy. The faint smile on his lips instantly made her return to that night in the mountain temple. It was you. Her mind was a little muddled, and she was at a loss. In the end, she did not know who the other party was. She only remembered that she was sent to a room in the mountain temple, and a woman with a gentle voice took care of her, cleaned her up, and sent her back to Su Jiheng. Su Jiheng asked her what was going on, and He only said that she wanted to go out for a walk and accidentally lost her way. He did not say much. As for the woman who sent her back, Su Jiheng did not mention her again. Therefore, she did not know who the strange man she met was. But the other party said, "If you really want to be strong, so what if you are blind? Even if you are blind, you can be the most different among the blind." She always remembered it in her mind, and she did not forget a single word. Later, she tried to distinguish shapes by listening to sounds, and she could live without her eyes. This process was very difficult, but every time she wanted to give up, she would think of the moon behind the Tianshan temple. The moon was very beautiful, and it would be a pity to give up like this. It was not that she did not think about everything that happened that day, but when she calmed down and thought about it, some things were not necessarily unintentional. How could she coincidentally hear the conversation between the maids at the door? How could no one in the Su family have noticed a person stumbling into the mountains? When she was sent back, Su Jiheng easily believed her words and did not pursue the matter. He just wanted her to be free. She was not a snow-white kitten raised in the courtyard of a rich family, and she was not held in the arms of a madam or a young miss. She would be happy after being teased with a ball of thread, and she was docile and weak. She was a wild cat that came out of an alley at night, dirty and tenacious. Even if she was blind, she could sit on the wall and hunt. They wanted her to die, but she did not want to die. After all, in this world, someone had given her a piece of candy and taught her how to taste the sweetness of the world. Hien had always thought that the strange passerby that night might be a kind-hearted young master or a very patient young master, but he didn't expect it to be Xiaoju. How could it be him? She asked softly. "Granny Su, what kind of person is she?" Xiaoju smiled and lazily said, "A very fierce crybaby bad-tempered woman." Hien also smiled, but his eyes were a little wet. She said, "Does young Mistress Su know that you're talking about her behind her back?" She had saved the worst side of herself for that night with Xiaoju, and the most gentle side of Xiaoju's life was probably reserved for her that night. Hien did not know that his stay at that time had become the only salvation for the desperate Hien. The moon was lonely and cold, hanging in the sky, but no one knew that he had once shone the moonlight so gently on a person. "She won't have the chance to know," Xiaoju said calmly, "because young Mistress Su was dead. Maybe she knows." Hien lowered his head and smiled. Suddenly he looked at the sky and sighed. "The moon is so beautiful." Xiaoju supported herself with her hands and looked up, but did not look at him. "Didn't you say that you wanted to drink with Chu Xilan? Didn't you bring wine?" Hien said loudly, "A cup of wine for the mountains, rivers, lakes, and seas." She held her hands in the air, and the moonlight fell into her hands, as if it was a cup full. She raised her hands to the sky and said, "To the moon." The young man looked on coldly and sneered, "Crazy." The girl turned around and solemnly raised the cup in her hand to him. "Here's to you too." Hien's eyes were no longer tired and gloomy. At this moment his eyes were bright, and his smile was bright. There was even a trace of gratitude in his eyes. "Gratitude?" He raised his eyebrows and snorted, but did not respond to her silly gesture. "Flattery." Hien looked into Xiaoju's eyes and said quietly in his heart, "Really, thank you very much." That night, Hien and Xiaoju sat together until very late. In the end, because it was too cold on the mountain, she and Xiaoju went down the mountain. When they got back, it was already midnight. The next day, they woke up later. After lunch, they wanted to find Chu Zhao to talk about what happened last night. But when they arrived, they found that he had already left. "Are you looking for Chu Xilan?" Lin Shuanghe passed by and said, "This morning, Chu Xilan returned to the capital with the people from Shuajing." "This morning?" Hien was stunned. "He didn't tell me it was this morning. They came in a hurry." Lin Shuanghe opened his fan and waved it. "Brother He, meeting and parting is fate. He will return to Shuajing sooner or later. You don't have to be too forceful." Hien was confused. What was she being too forceful about? She just felt that it was a pity that she didn't even say goodbye to Chu Zhao before leaving. After all, Fourth young Master Chu had been in Liangzhou with her every day to sort out the relationship between the officials in Shuajing. But since he had already left, there was no point in talking about this. Not long after Chu Zhao left, Song Taotao and Cheng Lisu also left for Shuajing. Xiao Ju arranged for them to be escorted back to the capital. Before the little girl left, she pulled on He Yan's clothes with tears in her eyes. "Brother He, you must come back to see me." "See you for what? You're a girl. My big brother is a man. How can he come to see you?" Cheng Lisu pulled her away and replaced her with herself. She laughed and said to He Yan, "Big brother, look at me. Come to our residence as a guest. I'll treat you to all the restaurants in Shuajing." Song Taotao. "Cheng Lisu. I know. When we get back, we'll cancel the engagement." Cheng Lisu picked her ear and muttered, "Bitch, only a ghost would want to marry you." With the two children playing around, it seemed like they wouldn't be lonely on the road. He Yan sent them to the carriage. For a moment he felt a bit disappointed. Usually, he felt that they were naughty and noisy. But when it was time to leave, he felt very reluctant. When she was Hirufei, because of her identity, she couldn't get too close to her brothers and sisters in the residence. Cheng Lisu and Song Taotao were like siblings in an ordinary family, just like He Yinsheng. In a way, they made up for the fantasy she had about her family. Wang Ba and Jiang Jiao walked over. Jiang Jiao said, "Brother He." After the misunderstanding was cleared, Jiang Jiao finally believed that He Yan didn't steal his wife. His attitude slightly improved. He said, "My family sent some things over. I picked some food and necessities. You can go get them for me later." Wang Ba said sourly, "The young master of the martial arts school is so good. He's already here to join the army, but people still send him things." "Aren't you the leader of the mountain bandits?" He Yan asked curiously. "Why didn't your subordinates send you anything?" "No money. Poor. Can't the bandits' nest be disbanded?" Wang Ba became angry. "Why are you asking me? You didn't receive anything either." "I'm just asking. Don't get angry." He Yan thought. How could she be the same as Wang Ba? She was now living in anonymity. If the He family still sent her things, did they want her to die faster? Or was it because the government couldn't write a warrant for her arrest? "But, Brother Jiang, why did your family suddenly send you things?" He Yan asked. Jiang Jiao said helplessly, "Brother He, did you forget that it's going to be the New Year soon?" "The New Year?" He Yan was startled. She had been living too comfortably these days. She actually almost forgot that it was going to be the New Year in a few days. The New Year was coming. It belonged to He Yan. The New Year. She suddenly became happy. Jiang Jiao and Wang Ba were both startled. Wang Ba asked suspiciously, "Why are you so happy? Did military governor Xiao give you something good behind our backs again?" He Yan answered seriously, "That's right. Good wine, good food, good future. Are you envious? Are you jealous?" After she finished speaking, she turned around and left. Wang Ba was stunned for a moment. He chased after her and said, "Hey, tell me clearly. What did he give you? Don't run." The Liang province guards had a pretty good New Year. Xiao Ju, as the commander, treated all the new recruits equally. Regardless of whether it was the southern prefecture soldiers or the Liang province guards, they all had a full New Year's Eve dinner. There were dishes, meat, and good wine. It was very lively. The joy even diluted the bitter cold at the border. But this New Year's passed, and training continued. After the end of the year, He Yan's injuries were almost healed. She also trained with them. Even though she wanted to enter the Nine Flags Battalion, the amount of daily training for the southern prefecture soldiers wasn't something He Yan, who had just recovered from a serious illness, could afford. As such, she could only suffer alongside the Liang province guards. The days passed peacefully until one day, Fei Nu received a letter from Lu County. In the room, Fei Nu was talking to Xiao Ju. "Young master, Luaning said that if the commander-in-chief is looking for a suitable person to travel with, it would be best to set off in the next few days. Jiang is not close to Liang province. If we set off now, it would be spring by the time we arrive. We should be able to make it in time for Princess Mingji's birthday. Qianqi might appear on that day." Xiao Ju looked up. "Xiao Huanqing? This child is the nephew of Princess Jiang's general, Cui Yuji, Fei Nu said. When he was young, he was taken away by the Cui family's enemies. Later, he was luckily rescued. He was stranded in the Central Plains and was adopted by a rich merchant. The rich merchant had no children, so Qiao Huanqing inherited his wealth. He married his wife last year, but for some reason, Cui Yuji found her whereabouts. Cui Yuji has no other family members, so he wrote a letter to invite him to attend Princess Mingji's birthday banquet. However, Qiao Huanqing is very timid. Before he reached Jiang, he was robbed by bandits when he passed by Lu County. He was slightly injured. He also heard that there were many bad people on the road to Jiang, so he refused to go forward. Xiaoju's eyes moved slightly. She smiled but did not say anything. Needless to say, the bad people were definitely Luan Ying's doing. However, after scaring Qiao Huanqing, this person did not dare to go to Jiang. Wasn't he too cowardly? The person sent by Luaning agreed with Cui Yuji that he would replace Qiao Huanqing to attend the banquet in Jiang. However, Qiao Huanqing would have to pay 1,000 taels of gold as a reward. Qiao Huanqing had been separated from his family for many years. Cui Yuji had not seen this nephew of his for more than 10 years, so no one knows what Qiao Huanqing looks like now. This person's identity is suitable, and the time is suitable. Luaning also sent a pass and a jade tablet to prove his identity. Young master, there shouldn't be any problems. A nephew who had been separated from the vassal king's trusted aide for many years. This identity could be said to be very convenient, but you make it sound so easy. Qiwu could not help but say. But Luaning already said that Cui Yuji invited Qiao Huanqing and his wife, as well as his newly married wife. It's not a big deal to be a governor, but where can we find a woman to pretend to be his wife? We can't say that the madam disappeared halfway. Fei Nu's face was wooden, but he also knew that Qiwu's words made sense. The Southern Prefecture Army and the 9 Banners Battalion did not lack men. Whenever there was a need for people, there were people who were agile, smart, handsome, and strange. There were all kinds of people, but there were no women. Luaning was the only woman, but Luaning, her son was already 12 years old. How could she be Qiao Huanqing's wife? Xiaoju frowned. For the first time, his handsome face showed some embarrassment. You can find a death warrior with high martial arts. Fei Nu reminded. How can that be? Qiwu refused without thinking. We haven't known each other for a long time. Who knows if they are good or bad? If they secretly harm young master, can you and I bear the responsibility? Qiwu spoke without thinking. Fei Nu had nothing to say, so he only said, Then do you have someone in mind? Me? Qiwu thought hard and said solemnly. Let's not talk about the Southern Prefecture Army. Even in our Shao mansion, we don't know many girls who know martial arts. When the madam was still alive, she didn't like master to play with swords and sticks. Even the maids we took in only knew how to write poems and flowers and tend to the flowers and plants. I haven't seen many girls like this. Find a girl? Someone outside the window unhurriedly waved a folding fan and elegantly said, I know this. Why don't you ask these 2 uncouth men instead of me? Xiao Huaijin, aren't you recklessly wasting God's gift? Have they seen a girl before? Why don't you ask me such a difficult question? This young master will answer your question. Xiaoju glanced at him and said indifferently, Who let him in? Qiwu. It wasn't me. Fei Nu. It wasn't me. Do you still need to let him in? Lin Shuanghe felt very good about himself. Everyone in the Liang Province Guard knows that you and I have been close friends for many years. I'm also the white-robed divine hand who can bring people back to life. Of course they respect me. I can go anywhere in the Liang Province Guard unimpeded. Throw him out. Fei Nu. Ai Xiao Huaijin, what kind of dog temper is this? Lin Shuanghe said as he walked in through the door. He waved his hand, indicating that Fei Nu and Qiwu should leave. Let me solve your young master's difficult illness. Fei Nu and Qiwu left. Lin Shuanghe closed the door and windows. Xiaoju coldly watched his actions. Lin Shuanghe sat down on the chair in front of him and asked, Looking for a girl? Xiaoju kicked him. Lin Shuanghe jumped up. If you want to talk, then talk. Don't keep hitting me. I didn't eavesdrop on your conversation just now. I only heard half of it. What do you mean a girl with good skills? Why are you looking for a girl with good skills? A female guard? Xiaoju stared at him and suddenly laughed. He lazily curled his lips and said unhurriedly, "Looking for a wife? Lin Shuanghe? Question mark. After a while, he suddenly came back to his senses and realized what Xiaoju meant. You're going to get married? That can't be. That's not right. You're always talking about blind marriages and mute marriages. If you're going to get married, you should find a wife yourself. Why are you asking Fei Nu and the others to find one for you as if you're picking vegetables? Xiao Huijin, are you talking nonsense? Xiaoju, did I say that you're looking for a wife for me? Lin Shuanghe, you're looking for someone else. You don't even know where you are. Xiaoju said impatiently, it's fake. Don't you know how to act? What? Lin Shuanghe stared blankly for a moment before slowly coming back to his senses. He stared at Xiaoju for a while, until Xiaoju revealed a displeased expression. Only then did he move closer and say, are you going to do something like last time when you went to the Liang province guard to deal with Sun Xiangfu? Find someone to pretend to be your wife and do something? Lin Shuanghe finally got the truth out of Song Taotao's mouth. The little girl was no match for this kind of person. In just a few sentences, Lin Shuanghe knew what was going on. You're not that stupid. Then isn't there someone in front of you? Lin Shuanghe said without thinking. Of course you're looking for my little sister He. Have you forgotten that my little sister He is also a girl? And she's quite skilled. She's brave and smart, not pretentious and very cute. If she can pretend to be your nephew, then of course she can pretend to be your wife. Xiaoju, no. Why not? Lin Shuanghe was dissatisfied. She can call you father. Is it wrong for you to call her wife? Xiaoju took a sip of tea and looked at him indifferently. Did you accept He Yan's money to speak for her? I'm so rich. Why would I accept money from others? But you, Lin Shuanghe leaned closer. Why are you so resistant? Xiao Huijin, Xiao Huijin. Have you forgotten that you found a fake wife? At this time, don't be picky about your real wife. Or, he stood up straight and waved his fan. Using a mysterious tone he said, are you afraid that you'll fall in love with her? Cough, cough, cough. Xiaoju choked. He said expressionlessly, you can leave now. Then I'll leave, Lin Shuanghe said. Don't blame me for not reminding you. He Yan is the best candidate you can think of. Although I don't know what you're going to do, but whatever you do, it will be very dangerous. Normal girls won't be able to handle this kind of dangerous situation. You don't trust those who can handle it. He Yan has fought side by side with you a few times. You know her quite well. In terms of loyalty, his gaze fell on Xiaoju. He seemed to be pondering. Are you going to take Shenmuxua with you? I think she would be very happy to go with you. However, I'm afraid that if Lord Shen finds out, he won't be able to resist rushing to Liangzhou to chop off your legs. I've seen more girls than you've trained soldiers. I think little sister He doesn't like you now. A girl who doesn't like you and you pretend to be husband and wife is the least likely to cause trouble. If you change Shenmuxua, then something big will happen. Most importantly, little sister He always dresses as a man. Other than you, no one knows what she looks like. It's like a person who fell from the sky. If she's really exposed, it'll be easier to hide her identity. Xiaoju calmly looked at the teacup in her hand. She didn't know if Lin Shuanghe had heard or not. A girl's thoughts are the most difficult to guess. A girl like little sister He who is simple and straightforward, with everything written on her face, or who says it directly, is suitable for this job. You might as well say that she's an idiot. Lin Shuanghe choked and said angrily, I've said all that needs to be said. I only said this because we're brothers. Think about it carefully. Think about it carefully before you choose someone. After he finished speaking, he grabbed his fan and left. After he left, Xiaoju put the teacup back on the table and sighed lightly. It was late at night. He Yan washed up and sat in front of the mirror. He ate too well during the new year in the army. He looked at himself in the mirror and felt that he seemed to have become slightly chubbier. Fortunately, He was born slender and weak. Now that he was slightly chubbier, he didn't look too plump. Instead, he looked a little less skinny and more delicate. He looked like a young lady who was raised by a wealthy family. It was just that this kind of coquettish behavior was really inappropriate in the military camp. He Yen waved his fist at his reflection in the mirror and made a fierce expression. He felt that he still looked imposing and was relieved. He walked to the bed and climbed onto it. The bed was as cold as ice. There wasn't enough charcoal in the army camp. Although the weather was slightly warmer after the new year, it was still a little cold at night. He had to use his body to warm up the mattress under him. Just as he felt a little warm, he suddenly heard someone knocking on the door. He Yen was stunned for a moment. He cursed in his heart. Who was it? It was the middle of the night. It wasn't easy to warm up the bed, but now that he went out, it was cold again. The knocking continued. He Yen couldn't pretend that he didn't hear it even if he wanted to. He could only put on his outer garment and open the door. When he opened the door, Lin Shuanghe was standing outside. This person was seriously wearing a thin white shirt on such a cold day. Even if he added cotton, it wouldn't be very thick. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to look so elegant. He was even fanning himself. He Yen couldn't help but grab his fan. Dr. Lin, can you stop fanning yourself? It's really cold. Lin Shuanghe stopped and smiled. Okay. Why are you looking for me so late at night? Lin Shuanghe. Brother He, let's talk inside. I don't have a problem, He Yen replied. But Brother Lin, didn't you say that a man and a woman alone? Before she could finish speaking, the young man walked past her and went inside. He stomped his feet and said, It's so cold. He Yen. She closed the door and turned around. Lin Shuanghe was still nagging. Why didn't you light a charcoal brazier in your room? It's too cold. I ran out of charcoal, He Yen said patiently. Since it's so cold, can Dr. Lin just tell me what's the matter? I've thought about it. There's something I must tell you. The sound of knocking interrupted his words. The two of them looked at the door in the middle of the room. The knocking sound was coming from inside. He Yen was stunned. Knocking on the middle door meant that it was Xiaoju? What did Xiaoju mean by knocking on the door in the middle of the night? She looked at Lin Shuanghe. Lin Shuanghe also had a suspicious look on his face. He Yen walked over, hesitated for a moment, and unlocked the door. Second young Master Zhao's expression was calm and elegant. His gaze swept past Lin Shuanghe for a moment, and quickly returned to He Yen. He Yen didn't know if it was an illusion, but she felt that second young Master Zhao's expression was a little strange. Commander-in-Chief. What's the matter? Lady He took a step forward and bent down slightly, looking straight at her. The young man had a handsome face. His eyes were like autumn water, full of moonlight. At such a close distance, she could clearly see his long and slightly curled eyelashes. His voice was low and magnetic, making her heart beat faster. Do you like me? Chapter 128. Do you like me? His voice seemed to have the ability to hook one's soul, causing He Yen to be rooted to the ground, unable to move at all. He couldn't help but gulp. Xiaoju frowned slightly. He Yen subconsciously curled her fingers and dug her fingertips into her palms. She didn't feel it when this person was lazy, but when he got close, even his aura became extremely dangerous. He raised his eyebrows, curled his lips, and asked again almost bewitchingly. Do you like me? No. I don't like you. He Yen subconsciously curled her fingers and dug her fingertips into her palms. The pain cleared her mind for a moment, so that she wouldn't say something shocking. She looked at Lin Shuanghe, who was standing at the side, and was also stunned. Hearing this, Xiaoju didn't get angry. Instead, she seemed to be slightly relieved. She stood up straight and raised her eyebrows. Very good, it's you. Me. The ambiguous atmosphere just now was swept away. He Yen took a step back and couldn't help but look at him. What do you mean by me? Madam Qiao. Madam Qiao. He Yen was confused. Lin Shuanghe seemed to have suddenly understood. He walked over and said, You're finally willing to listen to me. You think that my sister He is the best choice, right? He Yen was even more confused. It's a long story. Then take your time. He Yen went to get a stool for them. Xiaoju glanced at her, turned her head, and reminded her. Put on your clothes first. He Yen looked down. When Lin Shuanghe knocked on the door, she casually put on her clothes and didn't put them on properly. Now that she was bending over to get a stool, her clothes slipped off her shoulders. Lin Shuanghe said, I didn't see anything. He Yan felt that Xiaoju was making a mountain out of a molehill. It wasn't like she wasn't wearing undergarments inside. What should be covered was tightly covered. Second young master Xiao was too gentlemanly. But since he had already said it, she had to sort it out. After she was done, she listened to Xiaoju tell her the important parts of the story. He Yan slammed the table. Does Commander-in-Chief mean that you and I should disguise ourselves as husband and wife and set off for Jiang? This is ruining my reputation. If he pretended to be a nephew, he would have to call Xiaoju uncle. If he pretended to be a husband and wife, he would have to call Xiaoju husband. He Yan couldn't bear to look at the way he called Xiaoju hubby. Ruin your reputation? Xiaoju narrowed her beautiful eyes and sneered. You feel wronged? Yan. That was true. In the eyes of others, Xiaoju's reputation would most likely be ruined if this matter were to spread out. But wouldn't it be embarrassing for him to do whatever he wanted? It was rare that Xiaoju had a favor to ask of him. He Yan held his head high and was about to raise the price and extort him when he heard Xiaoju say casually, If you do this, you can join the Southern Mansion Army. He Yan deal. Lin Shuanghe felt a headache coming on. Sister He, you are a girl. You should be more reserved. Then I'm afraid you have overestimated her. Xiaoju mocked. How could she have that kind of thing? Being reserved is not worth mentioning in this kind of situation. He Yan giggled and said, Commander-in-Chief, don't worry. I can definitely act as a good wife and win face for you. I'll let others envy you and praise you for the good fortune you've accumulated over several lifetimes. Xiaoju suppressed her anger and said calmly, Xiao Huanqing's wife is a famous talented woman in Dewey. He Yan's self-praise came to an abrupt end. Proficient in zither, chess, calligraphy and painting, he glanced at He Yan with a bit of pity, obedient, sensible, and considerate. These 16 words, may I ask which one is related to you? Human-like, He Yan answered honestly. Puffed. Lin Shuanghe couldn't help but laugh. Halfway through he felt that it was inappropriate and said, Nonsense. Xiao Huijin, you are talking nonsense again. How is sister He not obedient, sensible and considerate? As for zither, chess, calligraphy and painting. He looked at He Yan. Do you know how to do it? He Yan. Not really. Xiaoju sneered. Lin Shuanghe immediately said, That's okay, I know how to do it. Don't you have to wait for a few days before you set off with me? Before you set off, I promise that I will teach you. I don't dare to say that I will be very good at it, but I will definitely be able to deceive that group of uncouth people. Xiao Huijin, leave sister He to me. In less than 5 days, I will give you a different kind of graceful woman. She is short, stupid, and has no talent. Then it will be hard on you. Xiaoju said casually. She stood up and walked to He Yan's side, staring straight at him. He Yan felt goosebumps from her stare. Xiaoju leaned closer, tilted his head and smiled. But I can't say for sure. After all, Our Lady He is the best at deceiving people. He Yan. Xiaoju always made praises sound derogatory. My good wife will make others envious of me. I will. His gaze deepened and he smiled faintly. I will wait and see. He left. The door closed, and the sound of the door being locked could be heard. He Yan heaved a sigh of relief and sat on the couch. Lin Shuanghe also stood up and smiled. It's getting late. I will leave first. Sister He, I will look for you tomorrow. Let's familiarize ourselves with the 4 arts. He Yan nodded. Lin Shuanghe wanted to say something but stopped. He Yan asked, Dr. Lin, is there anything else? He looked at He Yan with a complicated expression. Nothing. He waved his fan and left. After the door closed behind him, Lin Shuanghe sighed and pressed his chest. He had boasted to Xiaoju that He Yan didn't like Xiaoju and was most comfortable with her. This was true. After all, He Yan didn't sense a trace of affection for Xiaoju in their previous conversation. However, just now, when Xiaoju approached He Yan, Lin Shuanghe clearly saw He Yan's nervousness and helplessness. Something didn't seem right. It didn't seem like he was completely uninterested in Xiaoju. What was going on? Lin Shuanghe was burning with anxiety. If He Yan actually liked Xiaoju, wouldn't they get into trouble on this trip? No. It must be because Xiaoju was too beautiful. When the woman saw his face, she was instantly captivated by his beauty. She wouldn't feel anything after seeing him a few more times. He comforted himself. It must be so. He Yan sat on the couch in the room. Xiao Ju actually asked him to pretend to be her husband and wife when they went to Jiang. This was unbelievable. Not to mention her, just the fact that Xiao Ju was pretending to be someone else's wife would make people doubt their ears. Now that he knew the origin of the Nine Flags Battalion, He Yan didn't have much hope that he could really enter the Nine Flags Battalion. Those who could enter the Nine Flags Battalion were Xiao Ju's brothers who had risked their lives to stand up for her. They were heroes who had risked their lives to stand up for her. This had to do with ability. Presumably, the Nine Flags Battalion wouldn't easily recruit people in the future. It was also good to be able to enter the Nan Mansion Army. In Dawei, the Nan Mansion Army was well known for its fighting prowess. However, He Yan readily agreed to Xiao Ju's proposal. Even if these conditions didn't exist, she would still make concessions in the end. This was because the place Xiao Ju proposed was Jiang. He Yan's master was the passerby who saved her from the pile of corpses during the Battle of Mo County in her previous life. He was also a strange person who later taught her how to arrange troops, set up formations, and use swords, bows, and horses. His name was Lu Buwang. When they parted that year, she once asked Lu Buwang, "Master, if I want to find you one day, where should I go?" "We'll meet if fate wills it." Lu Buwang smiled and said, "But if you insist on finding me for something important, you can go outside Jiang City. I'll eventually arrive here." She remembered it in her heart. Now that He Rufei was dead, she accidentally received such a strange mission. But if she really went to Jiang, she might be able to see Lu Buwang. In her previous life, other than the He family, only Lu Buwang knew her identity. She really wanted to see her master. Jiang. He Yan sighed slightly. He actually began to hesitate in his heart. She didn't know if she could see him. She also didn't know if Lu Buwang could still deny her identity. She was very nervous. The next morning, He Yan woke up early and had breakfast. She wanted to go to the martial arts practice field for day training. As soon as she walked to the door, she was stopped by someone outside the courtyard. "Brother He." She turned around and saw Lin Shuanghe. He Yan asked, "Brother Lin, why are you here?" Judging from his appearance, he should have arrived long ago. Lin Shuanghe waved his fan and said, "I'll wait for you here." He looked up and down at He Yan's black clothes and asked, "Where are you going?" "Day training at the martial arts practice field. I haven't run yet in the morning." "Dr. Lin, I'll tell you later. If you don't go now, it'll be too late." "Hey." Lin Shuanghe stood in front of her and said, "If you're talking about day training, you don't have to go for the time being. I've asked Huijin to inform Chief Instructor Shen that you don't have to go for the next few days." He Yan asked, "Why? Did you forget that you'll be going to Jiang in a few days?" Lin Shuanghe smiled and said, "There are priorities. The martial arts practice field is right here. When you come back from Jiang, you can train however you want. However, you don't have much time left. Of course, you have to hurry up and do what's in front of you." He Yan was puzzled. "What's in front of me?" "Look." Lin Shuanghe pointed to He Yan. On the stone table in the courtyard, there was a zither, a chess set, a few pieces of paper, a brush, ink, and an inkstone. The Liangzhou Guard was a place for men to practice martial arts. When he suddenly saw these elegant things for a moment, He Yan thought that Chu Zhao had returned. "Since you're going to act as Qiao Huanqing's wife, you have to know a little about zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting." When King Mengji was still alive, he admired literati very much. In Jiang City, the vassal king's territory, the people worshipped talented people. Coincidentally, Qiao Huanqing's wife, Wen Yuyan, was also a famous talented woman. "Brother He," Lin Shuanghe said, "you're very good looking, and your skills are also very reassuring. You can't make any mistakes in this area. Come, write something for me to see." He Yan was speechless. For a moment, He Yan felt that he was back in Shuajing's Xianchang Gymnasium. He and Lin Shuanghe, who was also in last place, were about to sit down and recite to each other. Lin Shuanghe didn't seem to realize that his words had brought back nightmares. He was still urging him. "Come, brother He, write something. Let me see how you're doing." This person had nothing to do all day. He Yan was too lazy to argue with him, so he immediately picked up the brush and wrote something. Annoying. This word was written in a flamboyant and messy style. When Lin Shuanghe saw this, he stopped waving his fan. He was probably afraid that he would hurt He Yin, so he said in a gentler tone, "Brother, he's writing is quite spirited, but it's a bit too spirited. Don't you think that a woman's writing should be gentler?" He Yin felt that there was a problem with his words, so he immediately asked, "Who said that a woman's writing should be gentler?" According to what Dr. Lin said, men can't write hairpin-style small regular script? Yes, Lin Shuanghe said. But even if it's not gentler, it shouldn't be so sloppy. He Yin was speechless. Lin Shuanghe said, it's fine. Why don't you draw a picture? Just draw a picture of plum blossoms reflecting snow. It should be more than enough to fool those people from Jiang." He Yin spread out the paper and raised his hand to draw 3 flowers and a few dots of snow that looked like pockmarks. Lin Shuanghe looked at it and asked suspiciously, "Brother He, are you drawing a fried sesame seed cake? Did you accidentally fry the sesame seeds?" He Yin said, "I only know how to draw maps." This happened one after another. Lin Shuanghe began to panic. He said, "What about chess? Do you know how to play chess?" "My chess skills are very bad, and I like to regret my moves. I'm afraid that I can't play chess. Otherwise, I won't be able to control myself, and it won't be good if people see me as a joke." "What about the zither? You're a zither master, right?" Lin Shuanghe's eyes were filled with despair. Now there are girls in the residence who have to start learning the zither from the age of 5. He Yin spread his hands. "I don't know anything about musical instruments." The two of them looked at each other, and the atmosphere was awkward and silent. He Yin felt very uncomfortable and wronged. She had been raised as a boy since she was young, so she didn't learn the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. Later, she went to the Xianchang school, but she wasn't very good at learning. Even when a pie fell from the sky in the end, and she received the guidance of a famous teacher in Lu Buwang, who taught her all his skills, it was all about surviving on the battlefield. The zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting could neither make her bleed less on the battlefield, nor help her win more battles in the battle. For her it was too extravagant. She didn't have the conditions and she didn't have the time. Of course, the most important thing was that she didn't have the talent. He Yin wasn't the only one who felt wronged. Lin Shuanghe also felt wronged. He had seen so many noble ladies in Shuajing, and each of them was good at least 3 kinds of talents. Everyone knew how to play the zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting, but He Yin couldn't even do it? Lin Shuanghe suddenly doubted himself. Was it wrong for him to suggest to Xiaoju that He Yin should play Wen Yuyan? "Dr. Lin?" He Yin saw that Lin Shuanghe hadn't said anything, and she was afraid that Lin Shuanghe was frightened by her lack of talent, so she asked with concern. Lin Shuanghe came to his senses and forced a smile. "Nothing, I'm thinking about something." It was needless to say how exquisite it was when it was so bad. It could only be said that she had learned the most ordinary skills, and then she just needed to put on a show. There was a ready-made female teacher in the Liangzhou Guards, Shen Muxia, who was very talented. However, if Shen Muxia knew that He Yin was a woman and was asked by Xiaoju to play the role of husband and wife, he was afraid that something would go wrong. Although Lin Shuanghe didn't care about Shen Muxia, he didn't want to see any girl sad. Forget it, if he didn't go to hell, who would? Lin Shuanghe looked at He Yin. His heart was bleeding, but he gritted his teeth and smiled. "Brother He, you don't need to panic. As long as you work hard, you can grind an iron pestle into a needle. If you have a will, you can achieve anything. Since you don't know how to do it, let me teach you. We'll learn from the beginning, and I'm sure we'll be able to impress others." He Yin saw that this person was inexplicably excited, so she coughed lightly. "That. Dr. Lin, do you know how to do it?" If she remembered correctly, Lin Shuanghe was ranked last with her in the past. What qualifications did he have to teach others? Lin Shuanghe opened his folding fan and proudly said, "I don't know anything else, but I know how to paint. Watch me." Late at night, the sharp sound of a zither could be heard from the room next door. Fei Nu was helping Xiaoju tidy up the documents on the table. When she heard the sound, her hands trembled, and the documents scattered in a mess. He looked up at Xiaoju again. Xiaoju reached out her hand to support her forehead. She looked like she couldn't bear it. Fei Nu secretly sighed. He Yan shone brightly in the martial arts arena. He knew everything, but he didn't expect him to be so slow when it came to zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. This zither, if it was any girl in the capital who learned the zither, even if she was 5 years old, she would be able to play it much better than this. 3 days, 3 whole days. They would be leaving in 2 days, but He Yan's zither was just a wall away. He didn't seem to be improving at all. It was as if because he was getting impatient, his music was getting worse and worse. Qi Wu was an impatient person. He secretly pulled Fei Nu aside a few times and said, "If you don't know how to play, then don't play. Young master must be crazy. It's fine if he found a man to pretend to be his wife, but he even found one who doesn't know how to do anything. Isn't this giving others a chance to find out? Even if there's a shortage of people, it shouldn't be like this." He still didn't know He Yan's identity as a woman, so Fei Nu didn't say much. He only said, "Talk less, do more." But tonight Fei Nu muttered in his heart. He Yan was so slow. Could he really bear such a heavy responsibility? Suspense. In the room next door, Lin Shuanghe waved his hand and said weakly, "Younger sister He, that's enough. You can stop playing." He Yan stopped and looked at him. He humbly asked, "Brother Lin, have I improved compared to yesterday?" Lin Shuanghe choked and was speechless. Although he wasn't outstanding in zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting, he was still an elegant young master in the capital. He still knew a thing or two about these things. He originally thought that with his guidance, even if he couldn't practice very well in 3 days, he would at least be able to put on a show. But looking at He Yan's current appearance, he realized that he had overestimated himself. He had never seen such a stubborn woman. After 3 days, not only did she not improve, she played more and more harshly. Lin Shuanghe finally realized that there was actually someone in the world who could play the zither with such a sound. It was said that one was marked by the company one kept. Xiao Ju was also a master in both literature and martial arts. Her elegance was unparalleled. He Yan had been with Xiao Ju for so long, but why didn't he have the slightest bit of elegance? Yet this girl still looked like she was very hard-working. Seeing how hard-working she was, he couldn't even say harsh words. This reminded Lin Shuanghe of a classmate when he was young. That classmate was also like this. His head hung from a beam and an awl pierced his thigh. It was too horrible to look at. Forget it, forget it. This child couldn't be taught. Lin Shuanghe stood up and said with a smile, "Good, very good. Younger sister He, you're really talented. As long as you practice a little harder, you'll definitely amaze the world. You should practice for the next few days. When you reach Jiang, you can ask Huaijin to personally give you a few pointers. I think you'll be able to graduate from his apprenticeship." Yan. Really? Lin Shuanghe. It can't be any more real. He thought that He Yan was really too difficult to handle. It was better for him to retreat early. This kind of complicated teaching should be left to Xiao Ju. After all, He Yan was his person and his wife. This was also Xiao Ju's responsibility. When he thought of this, he felt relieved and relaxed. Lin Shuanghe smiled and said, "Then I won't be coming for the next 2 days. Younger sister He, you should practice more, practice more." He was debt-free and left lightly. He Yan was still skeptical. She clearly felt that it was unpleasant, but Lin Shuanghe said it like that. Was it really that good? The interests of elegant people were indeed different from those of ordinary people. In the next 2 days, besides practicing the zither, He Yan also found time to bid farewell to Hongshan and the others. Jiang was not like Liangzhou City. If he came and went, he would probably be away for at least half a year, and would not be able to return to the Liangzhou City guards. He missed his old friends after not seeing them for such a long time. "You went to work with military governor Xiao again?" Hongshan came closer and asked, "He, are you going to be promoted?" "Give birth? What do you mean by giving birth?" Xiao Mai was roasting a bird's egg that he had just picked up from the fire. It was very hot. He flipped it around in his palm. "Who's giving birth?" Shirtu gently knocked his head and looked at He Yan. "Take care." He Yan smiled. "Of course. I haven't congratulated you guys on entering the Vanguard Battalion. After the end of the year, a portion of the new recruits were selected to enter the Vanguard Battalion. Shirtu, Jiang Jiao, Wang Ba, and Huang Xiong were among them. Xiao Mai was still young and did not perform well in training. Hong Shan had always been average in all aspects. Fortunately, the two of them did not mind this. They were satisfied with being ordinary soldiers. Entering the vanguard battalion is not as good as you. Wang Ba took the opportunity to mock He Yan. You can go out with military governor Xiao every few days. You don't have to go through daily training, and you can also gain favor in front of your superior. Even the gods are not as good as you. Brother Wang, that's not right. When Brother He goes out with the governor, it will not be as easy as we think. There might be danger. Jiang Jiao looked at He Yan. You must be careful. He Yan stretched. I've always been careful. Seeing this, Huang Xiong twisted the prayer beads around his neck and said, Since you've always wanted to be promoted, this is a good opportunity. Military Governor Xiao is willing to take you with him, because he has taken a fancy to something you have. If you can seize this opportunity and earn military merits, you will be one step closer to what you want to do. You will also be able to accomplish what you want to do faster. He Yan thought that Xiao Ju was willing to take her with him because he had taken a fancy to something she had. That was because he had taken a fancy to her as a woman. You didn't expect this, did you? Well said. Well said. She waved her hand. Everyone, don't worry. We are all brothers who fought for the flag on White Moon Mountain, and slept together on the same bed. As long as I have a bite to eat, you will all have a bite to drink. If I can really be promoted, I will definitely not forget my comrades. However, I also believe that even without me, you will be able to make a name for yourself in Liangzhou. Well said. Huang Xiong said. If you don't rely on others and rely on yourself, you are all heroes. He Yan smiled slightly and looked at the vast sky of the Liangzhou garrison. The snow-capped mountains in the distance would gradually melt. Winter had passed, and spring would soon arrive. Jiang was different from Liangzhou. The mountains were high and the rivers were far away. Who knew what would happen in the future? She clapped her hands and stood up. The future was not something that could be imagined just by thinking about it. She just had to keep her head down and keep moving forward. End of Volume 3. Chapter 129. It would take almost a month to travel from Liangzhou to Jiang City. After the new year, spring arrived. They traveled all the way south. The closer they got to Jiang, the warmer the weather became. By the time they were almost there, the wildflowers by the roadside had bloomed, and the swallows had started to build their nests. Spring had really arrived. Outside Jiang City, Qi Wu drove a carriage over and said, Young master, this is the best carriage you can buy in this area. The carriage looked very luxurious. It was wrapped in fine peacock green silk, and the white gauze inside swayed slightly. It was very spacious and comfortable to sit in. He Yan was tired after riding for so many days. He Yan was very satisfied to be able to relax. However, Lin Shuanghe was still very picky. That's it. I wouldn't even look at something like this in Shuajing. The wood is too inferior. Didn't I say to pick the most expensive one? Qi Wu said. This is already the most expensive one. He Yan looked at Lin Shuanghe and sighed in his heart. After so many years, this young master's style of living and enjoying life had not changed at all. He Yan could not understand why Xiao Ju had to bring Lin Shuanghe along when she went to Jiang. Wasn't she dragging him down? He Yan was not the only one who could not understand. Lin Shuanghe was also puzzled. Before he left, he confirmed in every possible way. Are you sure you didn't say anything wrong? You want to bring me along to Jiang? Xiao Ju said, I'm sure. Why? Because we need a housekeeper. A housekeeper? Lin Shuanghe was angry. Have you seen a housekeeper as charming as me? Xiao Ju sized him up. I've seen one now. Although Lin Shuanghe said that, he also wanted to go out with Xiao Ju to see the world. He had never been to Jiang, but he heard that the girls there were all beautiful. Wouldn't it be a pity if he did not see them once in his life? Therefore, he just grumbled a little and agreed to go with them. They did not pay attention to anything else during their journey. However, now that they were about to reach Jiang City, they had to dress up properly. After all, they were no longer Xiao Huijin and He Yan. They were Hu Province's wealthy young master Qiao Huanqing and his newly married wife Wen Yuyan, as well as their guards Qi Wu and Fei Nu, and housekeeper Lin Shuanghe. Slave Fei took out the communication token, and looked at the city gate of Jiang in the distance. He said, "Young master, once we enter the city and find an inn to settle down, we still need to buy 2 maidservants. It's impossible for a wealthy young master and young mistress to travel without even bringing a servant girl with them. They had to take care of their own food, clothing, and daily necessities. Let alone Cui Yuji, no one would believe it." "By maidservants?" Lin Shuanghe said. "I'll go too. I know how to pick girls." Xiao Ju did not bother to pay attention to him. She only instructed Fei Nu, "Find the younger ones. Let them go home after we're done with Jiang." Fei Nu agreed. Qi Wu and Fei Nu drove the carriage outside. The carriage slowed down and slowly arrived at the Jiang city gates. Fei Nu handed the pass to the guards at the city gates. The guards looked carefully at the black words on the pass, and suddenly became respectful. "So you're Cui Zhongqi's family. Please enter." Lin Shuanghe asked, "Is Cui Yueji's status in Jiang very high? I heard that he grew up with Princess Mengji. He's loyal and capable. The princess trusts him a lot," He Yan answered. Lin Shuanghe asked curiously, "How did you know?" He Yan replied, "I heard it from someone." Xiao Ju glanced at her, but did not say anything. He Yan had never been to Jiang, but she had heard some things about the people and things in Jiang. It was because her master, Lu Buwang, came from outside Jiang City and had told her many anecdotes about Jiang. After hearing a lot, she also yearned for Jiang. However, it was troublesome to travel between the territories of the vassal kings. She did not expect that she could take advantage of Xiao Ju to come and take a look at the Shui city that Lu Buwang mentioned. It was really interesting. Jiang City was a beautiful city. Thousands of households were connected, and trade was prosperous. There was a canal outside the city where merchant ships gathered. Jiang was rich in silk, satins, and tea leaves that flowed along the Yuyang River to Yangzhou. It could be said that thousands of boats sailed like the wind. There were large and small rivers in the city. Small boats could be seen under bridges everywhere. The bows of the boats were filled with fruits and small things. This was the Shui city of Jiang. The people of the Central Plains had never seen such a scene. He Yan leaned on the carriage and looked out, clicking her tongue in wonder. Lin Shuanghe sighed and said, "Jiang is really like what Wanderer said. It's really a fairy-like place. No wonder it's easy to get out but hard to get in. If I came here, I wouldn't want to leave either. Look at the girls here. They're so beautiful and fresh. They're different from the girls in Shuajing City." He Yan was speechless. She thought, "You didn't say that when you were in Shuajing City." She turned to look at Xiao Ju again. Xiao Ju was sitting in the carriage. He didn't seem to be interested in the bustling scene outside the carriage. He sat there lazily, and his eyes were calm, without the slightest surprise. "Commander-in-Chief, should we go find an inn first?" she asked. "What commander-in-chief?" Lin Shuanghe immediately said, "We're already in Jiang. You can't call me commander-in-chief, lest you expose yourself." He Yan asked, "Then what should I call you?" "Of course you should call me husband." When the word husband came out, He Yan and Xiao Ju were shocked. Xiao Ju's expression was even more indescribable. It was very interesting. She endured it, and after a while, she flicked her sleeves and said, "You don't have to call me husband now. It would be weird to call him that in the future, okay?" He Yan's heart was pained. This task seemed good, but he didn't expect it to be so difficult to carry out. It even required him to throw away his sense of shame. No wonder the exchange condition was to join the Southern Prefecture Army. Xiao Ju said, "Let's find an inn first and settle down." Jiang was rich in resources, and it was prosperous. They didn't need to be picky when looking for an inn. Qi Wu picked a place that was closest to the city center. It was convenient for him to familiarize himself with the city. They first put down the heavier things on the carriage. Fei Nu walked over and said, "Young master, I just asked around. There's a restaurant nearby. The restaurant's lady boss will help to buy and sell servant girls for the rich families. If you're staying here today, you can go to the lady boss to look for help." Xiao Ju nodded. He Yan hesitated for a moment and said, "I won't go." They paused. Lin Shuanghe asked, "Young mistress, what's the matter?" He Yan didn't have any other reason. He just couldn't bear to see other people sell their sons and daughters. Even though he knew that some children might not necessarily have a bad life after entering a rich family as a servant girl, he still felt uncomfortable in his heart. When he was in the army, he was harassed by the Chang people in the war-torn lands. It was common practice for the common people to sell their sons and daughters. If it was a son, it would be better. At most, they would be sold to other people as long-term workers. Yen had seen it before. A 13 or 14-year-old girl sold to a 60-year-old man as a concubine for only a piece of sesame seed cake. Human life was so cheap. She really didn't like to see people being picked and sold like goods. I'm a woman now, right? She casually made up an excuse. I can't run around in this outfit. It doesn't look like Wen Yuyan. I was thinking if there's a ready-made clothing store nearby, I'll go and buy 2 pieces of women's clothing. If there's jewelry, I'll also buy some so that we won't be exposed when we meet Cui Yueji. In order to make it easier for her to travel, she still borrowed Cheng Li's clothes. Now that they were in Jiang, it was not appropriate for her to dress as a man. When Lin Shuanghe heard this, he felt that what she said was quite reasonable. He said, "That's fine too. Qi Wu, follow her." Xiao Ju said, "If there's anything, send a signal." Qi Wu acknowledged. Xiao Ju looked at He Yan again. "You stay nearby. Don't go too far. Jiang is not like Liangzhou. It's best to be cautious." He Yan nodded. "Okay. Then let's split up." Lin Shuanghe waved his fan. "Young mistress, remember to buy a few more beautiful clothes. When the time comes, we'll show them how beautiful the girls in the Central Plains are." Xiao Ju said, "Shut up." The 3 of them went down the stairs of the inn and left. He Yan and Qi Wu were left alone. Qi Wu thought, Lin Shuanghe is wrong. He Yan is not a woman. No matter how he dresses up, he can't be beautiful. What's the point? Just as he thought of this, he saw He Yan looking at the mirror and pulling out the hairpin on her head. In an instant, her black hair fell to her shoulders. "You." He Yan turned her head. "I'm a man. It'll attract attention if I go to a ready-made clothing store to buy women's clothes. Let your hair down first. What do you think?" She asked Qi Wu. "How do I look now?" Qi Wu. It's okay." He muttered in his heart. Why didn't I realize that He Yan actually looks like a woman? I thought that he would be difficult to look at if he dressed up as a woman. Now that this guy let his hair down, he really does look like a woman. No wonder the young master chose him to go with them. "Let's go," Qi Wu said. "Let's take a walk around the area while it's still bright." The 2 of them went out together. Jiang City was located further south than Liangzhou City, so the weather was much warmer. Now that it was spring, the sun was slightly peeking out, warming people's bodies. The willow trees emitted a soft green color, and the spring scenery was boundless. The sound of hawkers hawking their wares could be heard everywhere. The people of Jiang originally relied on fishing for a living. Their culture was warm and open, and everyone was hospitable. When they passed by a fruit vendor, he saw that He Yan was looking at a few fruits. He insisted on stuffing a few fruits into He Yan's arms and said, "Young mistress, take it. It's free. You can have a taste." Qi Wu. He was actually called young mistress? His disguise was too good. He Yan took the fruits with a smile and handed them to Qi Wu. He said, "Jiang City is really good." No wonder Lu Buang's tone was full of nostalgia when he mentioned Jiang back then. Thinking of Lu Buang, He Yan was a little worried. Now that she was staying with Xiao Ju, how could she find a suitable reason to go out of the city to look for Lu Buang's traces? Moreover, Lu Buang had said it vaguely at that time. Now it seemed that Jiang City was so big that it was really not easy to find someone. While she was thinking, Qi Wu had already asked a stall owner who was selling clay figurines next to him. "Little brother, may I ask if there are any shops selling ready-made clothes nearby?" When the stall owner heard this, he smiled and said, "Judging from your accent, you're not from Jiang, right? You've asked the right question." He pointed in a direction and said, "Jiang's embroidery workshop is the largest ready-made clothes shop. There are the best and most clothes in there. If you want to buy clothes, you can't go wrong there." Qi Wu thanked the stall owner and walked in the direction pointed by the stall owner with He Yan. He Yan was a little nervous. Qi Wu asked, "What's wrong with you?" "I feel a little uncomfortable buying women's clothes," He Yan said. Chiwu nodded and said, "It's quite uncomfortable." Hien spent more time as a man than as a woman in both his previous and current lives. However, even though he was a woman, he didn't care much about dressing up. He would wear whatever the residents prepared for him. If he really wanted to pick something, he wouldn't be able to pick it out. He thought to himself that he shouldn't make a fool of himself and pick something that didn't suit him. However, no matter how afraid he was, he still had to go through this. The embroidery workshop wasn't far from here, so it didn't take long for them to arrive. The clay figurine stall owner was right. The embroidery workshop looked very big. It had a total of 5 floors, and it looked like a pavilion. When the 2 men in green standing at the door saw them coming, they smiled and went forward to welcome them. One of them said, "Sir, is this your first time in the embroidery workshop?" Hien nodded and said, "Yes, we want to buy a few clothes. May I ask if you or this young master wants to choose clothes?" The man pointed upstairs and said, "In our embroidery workshop, the first floor is for men's clothes, the second floor is for children's clothes, and the remaining 3 floors are for women's clothes." He paused and said, "The higher you go, the more expensive the clothes are." He smiled and rubbed his hands. "Look, let's go to the 3rd floor." Hien made a prompt decision. "Okay." The man replied with a smile. "Please follow me." It was really big inside. Every floor was covered with fine carpets, and the decorations were very beautiful. Unlike the elegance of Shuo capital, Jiang's decorations were more colorful and lively, just like the people there. There were murals painted on the walls, and it seemed like everyone was having fun together. The streets on the water were very lively, and everyone was jostling shoulder to shoulder. It was very interesting. When the man saw Hien staring at the murals without blinking, he smiled and said, "This is Jiang's water god festival. Jiang relies on water to make a living, and we worship the water god every March. The 2 of you don't look like locals. If you stay here long enough, you can come and watch the water god festival. It's very lively." "March?" Hien asked. "Yes, it's this month. The water god festival is very fun. Miss, if you go, you won't lose out." The people here were very enthusiastic, so Hien didn't say anything. However, he was curious about the water god festival that the man mentioned. When they reached the 3rd floor, the man stopped and said, "This is it. Miss, please take a look first." Hien nodded. Chiwu was a little uncomfortable. This floor was full of women's clothes, and it didn't look good for a man like him to stay here. She said to Hien, "I'll wait for you downstairs. When you're done choosing, just send someone to inform me." Hien said, "Okay." After Chiwu left, the man continued to show Hien around. As he looked, he explained to Hien, "This cherry red antique satin moonlight dress has been selling the best recently. It's spring, and everyone likes to wear red. It's the most eye-catching when you go for a walk. If you want to attract your lover's attention, this is the best. This lotus-colored peony jade dress is also not bad. When paired with a round fan, you'll look like a fairy from a painting. Elegant and otherworldly, noble and elegant. It's very wonderful. Look at this. This colorful butterfly pattern dress has 100 butterflies on it. They were all sewn on by our embroiderers. Think about it. If you wear this dress among the flowers, you'll definitely attract a lot of butterflies. You'll be surrounded by real and fake butterflies. How adorable." Hien was speechless. The shop assistant of the embroidery workshop was too eloquent. Hien was moved by his words. She felt that every piece of clothing hanging on the wall was unique and exquisite. Even if it was an ordinary woman, she would be dazzling and moving when she wore it. She was the only one on this floor. If a few more people came to look at the clothes, how would the man be able to handle it? Fortunately, she had some discernment and didn't believe everything. However, she couldn't help but feel dizzy after looking at all the clothes on the 3rd floor. There were too many, and she didn't know which one to choose. Hien thought for a while and looked at the man. "Little brother, I rarely choose my own clothes, so I don't know which one to choose. Why don't you help me look for clothes that won't go wrong, won't be picky, and won't be impolite at the banquet?" The man was also a shrewd person. When he heard Hien's words, he knew that Hien didn't know how to pick out clothes. He smiled and said, "Sure. Miss, I see that your skin is fair, And you are different from the women of Jiang. With such outstanding looks, wouldn't it be a pity if you only choose clothes that won't go wrong and bury your beauty? Why don't? He walked in front of a piece of clothing and picked up a corner of it to show Hien. Take a look at this one. This heavenly fragrance jade dress is very light and thin. It feels very delicate to the touch. The color is aqua blue, and it suits your skin very well. The style is simple and elegant, but if you wear it to the banquet, you definitely won't be impolite. There is only one piece of this dress left. If you like it, why don't you choose this one? Hien walked in front of the dress. Compared to the previous ones, this dress looked much simpler. It wasn't as fancy, and it felt very comfortable to the touch. Hien smiled and said, "Then I'll choose this one. I want this dress." A hand reached out from the side and snatched the dress from Hien's hand. Hien turned around and saw a young woman in a yellow dress standing in front of him. She had an almond-shaped face and peachy cheeks, and her beauty was like a hibiscus. However, her skin was slightly darker, and her figure was excellent. She was also quite tall. She didn't even look at Hien. It was as if Hien didn't exist in front of her. Behind her were two maidservants dressed in green. One of them said, "Why are you still in a daze? Why didn't you greet our young lady when you saw her?" The man was stunned. He quickly bowed and greeted, "Eldest young lady Yen." The woman called eldest young lady Yen snorted in response. The man turned around again and wiped his sweat. He said to Hien, "Miss, why don't you choose another piece?" Even a fool would understand what was going on. No matter where and when, there was no lack of people who relied on their family background to run rampant without fear. The man was innocent. Hien didn't want to make things difficult for him. Moreover, it was just a piece of clothing. He smiled and said, "It's fine. I'll choose another one." "I'm sorry." The man turned his back and said in a low voice, "Eldest young lady, Yin usually doesn't come to our ready-made clothing store. Even if she comes, she won't go to the third floor. I don't know what happened today. It's fine." Yin gave him a reassuring look. "There's no need to explain. I understand. Thank you, thank you." The man walked to eldest young lady Yen and smiled. "Eldest young lady Yen, do you need me to choose clothes for you? Who are you to choose for me?" Eldest young lady Yen said disdainfully, "Go and choose for others. I don't need your guidance." The man retreated to the side hesitantly and returned to Hien. Compared to the sarcastic eldest young lady Yen, this man was obviously much gentler and easier to talk to. He smiled and said, "Miss, take a look at this. This Su-embroidered pipa dress is pinched at the waist. The sleeves are also very wide. When you wear it, you feel like you're walking in the clouds. It's also extremely beautiful. The color is also pear blossom white. When you wear it, you will definitely have smooth skin and jade bones. You will be seductive." Hien couldn't help but laugh when she heard that. This man was selling clothes, so be it. Why was he praising people so easily? It made her feel embarrassed. Hien looked at the dress and felt that it was not bad. She said, "Then this one will do." As soon as she finished speaking, the maidservant beside eldest young lady Yin reached out and pulled the dress that Hien pointed at over. She said, "Our eldest young lady wants this too." Again? Hien frowned slightly. If it was a coincidence once, it would be intentional if it happened twice. But she had never seen this woman before. Why was she targeting her? She turned around and faced the other party. She asked politely, "May I ask, miss, did I offend you in any way?" "No." Eldest young lady Yen looked at her and raised her eyebrows. "I'm just picking a dress. How did you offend me? One or two pieces are naturally fine." Yen smiled. "But don't tell me you'll choose whatever I choose later?" Eldest young lady Yen pursed her lips and said arrogantly, "It seems that you're not stupid. I don't understand. Why are you like this? You have to ask why for everything. Very good, but I'm not your husband. Why should I answer your questions? I'm here today. Even if I buy all the clothes on the third floor, that's because I'm capable. If you're not convinced, you can buy them too. There are so many clothes. There will definitely be one that I don't want. However," she sized up Hien and said disdainfully, "Look at you. You don't look like you can afford much." Hien was wearing Cheng Li's plain clothes. The material wasn't bad, but she had been on the road for days and was travel-worn. She also came from the inn and didn't have time to change her clothes. In the eyes of others, her head and face were covered in dirt, and she looked poor. What kind of luck did she have? She could even meet such an arrogant young lady when she came out to buy clothes. Hien had always been simple and violent when dealing with men. Even if she was not convinced, she would at most fight. However, women were different. She could not beat up a lady on the street. The embroidery workshop is not owned by you, Hien said patiently. I just want to buy some clothes. Please don't cause trouble. It would have been fine if she did not say this. Once she said this, the woman was like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. All her fur stood on end. She narrowed her beautiful eyes and said in a sharper voice, Cause trouble? You actually said that I'm causing trouble? Where did this country bumpkin come from? It's fine if you don't know me, but you're even full of filthy words. You want to buy clothes? Look at your shabby appearance. Can you afford it? Hien, young madam. A voice interrupted. Hien turned around. He did not know when Xiao Ju and Lin Shuanghe had found their way here. Qi Wu and Fei Nu were behind them. There were also two young ladies dressed in pink who stood timidly at the side. Xiao Ju walked forward. The Ji young women were beautiful and bold, while the men were masculine and powerful. A handsome, elegant, and charming young man like him was really rare. Young Madam Yen stared blankly at him. Xiao Ju stared at her for a while. Suddenly, she curled her lips and leaned close to Hien's ear. Her voice was very low, but it was just enough for the people around to hear. What's the matter, madam? Chapter 130. The young man was tall and straight like a pine tree. The dark blue robe on him made him look noble and elegant. His eyes were as dark as the night sky, and they were filled with coldness. However, the corners of his mouth were curled up with a hint of casual mockery. The word madam was so low and mellow that everyone present was intoxicated. Hien was the same. He only felt the place where his breath touched instantly stiffen. For a moment he was speechless. Eldest Miss Yen bit her lip and looked at Xiao Ju. She was half stunned and half jealous. Such a handsome man was actually married, and the one he married was the country bumpkin beside him? Why? Seeing that Hien was silent, Xiao Ju raised her eyebrows and said in a gentler voice, Did she bully you? Hien was so shocked that he came back to his senses. Just as he was about to speak, eldest Miss Yen spoke first. She said, Young master, I didn't bully anyone. I just took a fancy to the same clothes as this young lady. When eldest Miss Yen spoke to Xiao Ju, she was no longer as aggressive as before. She was so gentle that it was as if she was a different person. She couldn't bear to look away from Xiao Ju. But I clearly heard you say that our young madam has no money. Lin Shuanghe wanted to see the world in chaos. He waved his fan and said, Even I the butler can't stand it anymore. Butler? The servant in green, who didn't dare to make a sound, was secretly shocked. He thought that it was a young master from some family, but he didn't expect it to be a butler. Oh no. This group of people had extraordinary appearances and auras. Could it be that some important person had come to Jiang? He wondered if he had offended her just now. Xiao Ju turned and asked Hien, Did you choose anyone? Hien shook his head. Eldest Miss Yen handed over the aqua blue dress that Hien had taken a fancy to just now. She smiled and said, If you really like this dress, I'm willing to part with it. Hien was speechless. Was Xiao Ju's face so useful? This change in attitude was like a completely different person. Hien thought sourly, It's really advantageous to be good-looking. Xiao Ju only glanced at her indifferently. She did not reach out to take it. Instead, she asked the waiter, What's upstairs? In reply to young master, the shop assistant replied while wiping his sweat, Our embroidery workshop has a total of 5 floors. The 3rd to the 5th floor are all women's ready-made clothes. The clothes on the 5th floor are the most expensive, and are specially made for nobles. The price is also higher. Bring out the treasure of your shop. Miss Yan's face froze. Hien was also shocked. He tugged at Xiao Ju's sleeve and whispered, It's okay, I'll just wear it casually. Hien felt that it was inappropriate for her to choose the most expensive one based on her family's background. Xiao Ju said calmly, Shut up. The shop assistant of the embroidery workshop was a talented person. He only said, "Please wait a moment." He immediately went upstairs. Not long after, he came down with a small box wrapped in soft satin. He placed the box on the round table in the room. He unlocked the box and carefully took out a thin, pale white silk dress. The pattern of the dress was not complicated. It was not as flashy as the one just now. However, the sunlight shone through the window and shone on the dress. The original white color was actually refracted into a rainbow-like color. It was faintly discernible, like the scales of a mermaid. It was suffused with a faint blue-purple gold powder. It was thin and soft. It did not seem like an ordinary item. This dress is made of mermaid yarn. I dare say that this is the only one in Jiang and Dawei, not to mention the embroidery workshop. This mermaid gauze was bought from a merchant at a high price. The rest of the material was given to Her Highness, and the last bit was used to make this teardrop gauze. This was because under the sun, the dress would emit the color of a mermaid's tears. Dear guest, this is the treasure of our shop. Xiao Ju glanced at the dress in the shop assistant's hands and said, "It's barely passable." He Yan felt that there was no need for so many fancy words. Wasn't it just a dress? What mermaid yarn? It was as if mermaids really existed in this world. It was just a gimmick. How could anyone believe it? "How much is it?" Lin Shuanghe asked. The shop assistant stretched out a finger and said, 100 gold. 100 gold? He Yan was surprised. Why don't you just rob a bank? 100 gold for a dress. This was too extravagant. She had not been so extravagant when she was a rich young master or madam in her previous life. The shop assistant smiled and said, "Madam, don't underestimate this dress. Other than looking good, it is also a treasure. It can be used for self-defense. It is invulnerable and impervious to fire and water. 100 gold for a dress is a little expensive, but 100 gold for a treasure is already very cheap. There's no need for that." Qi Wu whispered to Fei Nu. Would a rich madam who can afford to wear this dress go through a mountain of swords and a sea of flames for no reason? There's really no need for that. "I'll take this one," Xiao Ju said calmly. "Pick a few other pieces. The ones on the 5th floor will do." Okay. The shop assistant was overjoyed. It was not every day that he met such a generous customer. He decided to strike while the iron was hot and continued. "Dear guest, do you want to take a look at the jewelry in our embroidery workshop? This tear gauze should be paired with a pearl peony hairpin, a pair of exquisite white jade pendants, and shoes of the same color. Our madam's rare beauty will not be wasted." "He Yan? Xiao Ju said. "Choose as you see fit." Eldest Miss Yen was stunned. He Yan felt that it was inappropriate. He tugged at Xiao Ju's clothes and pulled him towards him, saying, "It's too wasteful." Xiao Ju said calmly, "Let go." He Yan immediately let go of her. Just as Xiao Ju had said, the shop assistant went to pick out a few pieces of clothing, a few pieces of jewelry, and brought over a small chest for everyone to look at. After counting them one by one, he closed the chest and said, "A total of 200 gold." He Yan almost fainted when he heard this. Xiao Ju said to Lin Shuanghe, "Pay up." Lin Shuanghe was shocked. "Me? Do you want me to pay?" "Housekeeper." Lin Shuanghe. He could only take out a banknote from his sleeve. He forced a smile and said, "Okay, I'll pay." Just as he was about to hand the banknote over, Xiao Ju said, "Wait." Everyone paused. He Yan was delighted. Why did she suddenly realize that she was too extravagant and wanted to turn back? Xiao Ju looked at Miss Yan and smiled. She said slowly, "I forgot to ask if this lady is interested in the same box of clothing. If she likes it, I'm willing to part with it." Eldest Miss Yan's expression was extremely ugly. Although her family was rich, she did not always bring 200 gold with her when she went out. Moreover, there were tailors at home who specialized in making clothes. It was difficult for her to spend 200 gold to buy things at a ready-made clothing store. This overly beautiful man was clearly standing up for his wife. She gritted her teeth and said, "Thank you for taking care of me. I don't like it." Xiao Ju nodded and ordered Fei Nu to put away the box. Just as she was about to leave, she looked at the other party and said, "Let me give you a kind reminder. Everyone was stunned. The beautiful man's eyes were gentle, but his tone was full of sarcasm. Your skin is too dark. The clothes from the embroidery workshop don't suit you. Go to another shop. When they reached downstairs, Lin Shuanghe was still holding his stomach and laughing nonstop. Ha 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 ha. Why? Young master, your words are too harsh. Didn't you see that lady's face just now? Oh my god, if I were her, I wouldn't be able to sleep tonight. She has her heart on you. It's fine if you reject her, but you still have to be so sarcastic. Oh my god, ha 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 ha. Yan also felt that Xiao Ju's actions were too childish. However, this wasn't what surprised her more. She caught up with Xiao Ju in a few steps and asked. She wanted to take the clothes I chose just now because her skin is dark and she can't wear these colors. She knew it. It was her first time in Jiang, and she had no enmity with the other party. Why would she find trouble with her? Later, when she heard Xiao Ju say this before she left, she realized that perhaps the shop assistant had said fair skin when he was introducing the ready-made clothes to her, which made Miss Yan unhappy. There were such people in the world who would be jealous and hateful when they saw that someone else had something they didn't have. Aren't you very good at lying? Is that all you're capable of? Xiao Ju's expression returned to indifference. She said disdainfully. Can't you tell that she's jealous of you? How would I know that there are things about me that make people jealous? Yan muttered. Especially when women are jealous of me. It was common to be envied by men. They said that he was good at fighting, could run fast, and could drink a lot. So this was what it felt like to be envied by women. In this way, she felt that women's jealousy was very cute. It was just a little quarrel and a little trouble, unlike men who would fight for the slightest thing. Also, she asked Xiao Ju, am I very fair? Is that why she's jealous? Am I very fair? She often dressed like a teenager and was already used to it. Suddenly, she saw that her long hair was spread out. Although she was still wearing a teenager's clothes, her eyes were lively and delicate. She indeed looked like a young girl. Although she looked a little silly, but Xiao Ju looked away. You look like a piece of charcoal. Yan was speechless. Would this person die if she said something nice? Behind them, the two newly bought maidservants in pink clothes were timid and did not dare to speak. Qiwu looked at Yan, who was deliberately teasing Xiao Ju, and rubbed her arms. She could not help but say to Fei Nu, this Yan, isn't it too fast for him to get into character? Look at him now, he's simply treating himself as a woman. I'm getting goosebumps. It's strange that he's acting like this. Fei Nu said, see no evil, hear no evil. When they returned to the inn, the two maidservants first looked at Yan. One of them said timidly, Madam, we'll go upstairs to tidy up your room first. Please wait for a while before coming up. Yan said, okay. When the two maidservants went upstairs, Yan asked, these are the maidservants you bought. They're too young. The two maidservants looked at most 12 or 13 years old. He did not know if it was because they were that old or because they were too thin and weak, but they looked exactly the same. They were a pair of twins. Lin Shuanghe answered, we have no choice. Our young master is too beautiful. If we find someone around your age, it's inevitable that she'll have other thoughts. What if she climbs into our young master's bed in the middle of the night? It's safe and reliable to find someone who's young and immature. When Yan heard this, he felt that Lin Shuanghe was simply a genius. What he said was very reasonable. Based on Miss Yan's reaction at the embroidery workshop, Xiao Ju's face and body were indeed enough to attract bees and butterflies. It was better to be careful, Lin Shuanghe said again. Although these two maidservants are young, I spent a lot of money on them. I say. He suddenly reacted and looked at Xiao Ju. You insisted on bringing me to Jiang not because you need a butler, but because you need a money bag, right? Yan burst out laughing. Lin Shuanghe was still bitterly reprimanding Xiao Ju's actions. Do you know that what you're doing is very unkind? You bought clothes for your wife, maidservants, and an inn for her. Why should I spend money? It's not like they're mine. Yan could not laugh anymore. Xiao Ju said indifferently, why did you follow me all the way to Jiang safely? Because you're here, Lin Shuanghe said. Nonsense, with Xiao Ju around, who would dare to block the road and rob them? Xiao Ju did not deny it. That's enough. Protection fee. Lin Shuanghe said, protection fee? He said, Xiao. Xiao Ju gently shushed him and looked at the box outside. She raised her eyebrows and said, go and move the things, Butler Lin. Lin Shuanghe had never won against Xiao Ju when it came to talking. He snorted, took out a few round things from his sleeve, and stuffed them into He Yan's hands. He Yan was puzzled. What are these? I bought rouge and powder for my wife. Lin Shuanghe's attitude towards He Yan was very good. He said, when we came to find you after buying the maidservants, we already met Cui Yueji's people. The Cui family had already arranged for the guards at the city gate. When they saw Qiao Huanqing's pass, they reported to them that we might have to stay at the Cui residence tonight. After thinking about it, you still need these. He Yan stared at the rouge and powder box in his hands and frowned. This was too difficult for her. I'm going to move the things. Lin Shuanghe waved his hand and leaned close to He Yan. He whispered, younger sister, he dress up well. Let those blind people see how beautiful you are. I have high hopes for you. Tonight, you will be the most beautiful pearl in Jiang City. He Yan. Thank you so much. A young maidservant's crisp voice came from the corridor. Madam, young master, we have finished tidying up the room. You can come in now. Xiao Ju said, let's go. He Yan put away the rouge and powder and walked upstairs with Xiao Ju. When they reached the door of the room, they stopped and asked hesitantly, you're going in too? Although they were husband and wife in name, but were they going to stay in the same room? She still had to change her clothes. That was not good. Xiao Ju looked at her as if she was looking at an idiot. After a while she said, I'm going to Lin Shuanghe's room. Call me when you're done. He Yan. Okay. She entered her room. The two maidservants retreated to the sides and looked at her with their grape-like eyes, carefully waiting for her orders. He Yan could not stand the maidservants' gazes. She sat down and asked politely, what are your names? My name is Cui Jiao. My name is Hong Qiao. He Yan nodded. Good name. Cui Jiao Hong Qiao. I'm a little hungry now. Can you go to the kitchen downstairs and help me make some snacks? I want them fresh out of the oven. Just keep an eye on them, okay? The maidservants hurriedly nodded and said, okay, madam. We will go now. After Cui Jiao and Hong Qiao left, He Yan breathed a sigh of relief. She was not used to being served by others. Looking at the clothes and jewelry in the box, she felt a headache coming on. After thinking about it, she decided to wash her face first and wash her deliberately thick eyebrows. Now that she was traveling with Xiao Ju, she did not deliberately darken her face to save time. She had covered her face for an entire winter in the Liang province guards, so her face was already white. There was clean hot water in the room. He Yan washed her face, wiped it with a handkerchief, and sat down at the table. He did not know if it was because she was a year older, but Lady He's face was much more beautiful than a year ago. Her facial features were also more distinct. She used to be a charming little beauty, but now, the tackiness between her eyebrows had been washed away, and there was a trace of heroism and straightforwardness. Looking at her now, she was really quite attractive. She had seen too many men's clothes, so she was not used to seeing a woman's clothes. He Yan picked up the wooden comb on the table and first combed her long hair. Her gaze fell on the pile of cosmetics that Lin Shuanghe had given her. Rouge and lipstick. How should she use it? She could not remember clearly. She had used it a few times when she was Madame He. After that, she had maidservants to serve her, so she did not need to do it herself. She really did not know where to start. She picked up the conch mayonnaise on the table. She would start with what she was familiar with. He Yan moved her head closer to the mirror and began to seriously draw her eyebrows, one stroke at a time. She had just finished drawing one when someone knocked on the door. He Yan opened the door with the conch mayonnaise in one hand. The moment he opened the door, he saw Xiao Ju. He stuffed the box into He Yan's hands and said impatiently, "You forgot to bring your clothes." He Yan slapped her head. "Yes. I almost forgot. She did not even bring the clothes that were worth 200 gold taels, so why did she put on makeup?" He Yan said to Xiao Ju, "Thank you." Xiao Ju's gaze fell on her face. She was stunned and asked in disbelief, "What are you drawing?" He Yan said, "My eyebrows. How's my skill?" The corners of Xiao Ju's mouth twitched. She was used to dressing as a man, so she naturally drew her eyebrows thick and thick. That was why she looked like a young man with sharp eyebrows and bright eyes. Now that her long hair was loose and her face was dressed as a woman, she naturally had to draw a woman's eyebrows. Hien drew the difference between a man and a woman. She drew her sharp eyebrows into curved eyebrows. Curved, thick eyebrows made it look as if there was an earthworm above her eyes. Moreover, it was the kind that was very fat. Xiaoju could not bear to watch anymore. She grabbed Hien's arm and dragged her to the basin. She said coldly, "Wash it off." "Why?" Hien raised her head. "I think it's quite good." Xiaoju looked down at her and sneered. "You think it's quite good? Okay," Hien said softly. "It's not very good." But so what? She was good at what she did for men. But she was clumsy when it came to women. She did not do it overnight. "Where are the two girls?" "They went to the kitchen to prepare some food for me." Hien quickly washed the eyebrows that she had drawn just now and wiped them dry with a handkerchief. She was discouraged and decided to go all out. "I only know how to draw eyebrows like this. Why don't?" She opened her palm, revealing the conch shell in her palm. "You do it." She was just joking. She did not expect Xiaoju to look at her and reach out to take it. Hien was really frightened this time. Xiaoju walked over to the window seat and saw that she was not moving. "Come here." Hien instinctively walked over. He said again, "Sit down." Hien sat down on the stool in front of her. However, she still felt that it was inconceivable. She asked, "Are you really going to draw for me?" Xiaoju glanced at her uneasy face and pursed her lips. She said meaningfully, "Are you afraid?" "Afraid?" Hien immediately sat up straight. "What's there to be afraid of? I'm just afraid that you won't be able to draw well." "I'm just boasting." Xiaoju sneered. "You worry too much. Sit down." It was warm in Jiang in March. The sunlight shone in through the window and secretly climbed onto the young man's face. The handsome man, who was as pure as the spring moon, gently brushed her eyebrows with his slender fingers. Hien felt a little uneasy. She had never thought that Xiaoju would draw for her. She had never been so close to a man in her previous life. Even her husband, Su Zhiheng, would not do this when they were newlyweds. In the eyes of others, a man drawing for a woman would be seen as a femme fatale and indulging in beauty. However, when Xiaoju seriously drew for her eyebrows, she was mesmerized for a moment. Hien immediately realized that she was mesmerized and leaned back slightly. Xiaoju frowned. "Don't move." She was stunned. Xiaoju's hand had already clasped the back of her head and pulled her in front of him. In an instant, the distance between them shrank even closer than before. This allowed her to see him more clearly. Xiaoju, who had lost his sharpness and coldness, looked exceptionally gentle at this moment. His eyelashes were thick and dense, and they drooped down, covering half of his dark pupils and covering the coolness in his eyes. He sat lazily, and his facial features were peerless. His thin lips were bright red, and it was tempting to keep staring at them. She remembered a rainy night in her previous life. If she had known that it was him, if she could see and accept his gentleness and kindness, would she have softened her attitude and not been so fierce when she looked at his face? Perhaps it was because her gaze was so intense that it was impossible to ignore it. Xiaoju's hands paused and their eyes met. Hien suddenly felt guilty, as if he had been caught doing something bad. Xiaoju frowned slightly. "Why is your face so red?" "Me." Hien was stunned and unconsciously covered her face with her hands. She really did feel hot. She couldn't find an excuse and stammered. Xiaoju stared at her for a while and suddenly approached her. "Don't tell me you." He raised his eyebrows, his eyes unfathomable, and smiled. Like, no. Before he could finish, Hien immediately denied it. She even raised her hands and shouted as if she was swearing. "I really don't like you. How could I, an ordinary person, dare to have thoughts about you? I definitely don't dare to have any improper thoughts about you. Really?" Xiaoju leaned back, still holding the conch daisies in his hands. Seeing her hurriedly refute, he sneered and lazily said, "I didn't say anything. Why are you so agitated?" He raised his eyebrows. "Do you have a guilty conscience?" "I really didn't." Hien was anxious. What was wrong with this person? Why was she still harping on this matter? Was it fun to tease people? What kind of bad fun was this? Outside the door, two maidservants were holding plates of desserts in their hands. They didn't know whether to enter or not. Are we going in or not? Hong Qiao whispered. I think we shouldn't. Cui Jiao said. I've seen a scholar read a poem. Madam and young master are currently in a passionate mood, so it's better not to disturb them. Oh. Hong Qiao nodded, not fully understanding. Cui Jiao thought, what was that poem called? It seemed to be, after putting on makeup, she asked her husband in a low voice. Do you draw eyebrows? That's right. Chapter 131. After a while, she finally finished drawing her eyebrows. Hien snatched the conch from her hands and said, Okay, you can go now. Xiao Ju raised her eyebrows. Don't you want to look in the mirror? I'll look at it with you after I'm done. Hien felt that her face would continue to burn as long as this person sat there, so it was better to send him out. She pushed and shoved him out of the door. When she opened the door, she was shocked to see Cui Jiao and Hong Qiao standing outside. Hien asked, Why are you here? Cui Jiao was a little flustered. We brought some snacks over and saw that young master was drawing young mistress's eyebrows, so we didn't dare to disturb you. Hien. Xiao Ju didn't feel uncomfortable at all and only said, Take your time, I'll go find housekeeper Lin. The two maids followed Hien into the room. Hong Qiao followed behind Hien and said enviously, Young master is so good to young mistress. Hien what? He even drew young mistress's eyebrows personally. Perhaps because they were less afraid of Hien now, the two maids became bolder. Cui Jiao said, We've seen those loving couples, but they wouldn't go to this extent. Well, this illusion of an immortal couple was now a reality by a fluke. Hien smiled. Do you know how to do makeup and comb hair? This was a little difficult for her. It wasn't that she didn't know how to tie a woman's hair, but she only knew the simplest kind. She was afraid that she didn't deserve the title of wealthy madam. We know how to do makeup. Hong Qiao is skillful, and her hair looks the best. Cui Jiao said. What kind of hair do you want today? Do you want light makeup or bright makeup? Hien was at a loss. I'm going to the banquet, as long as I don't lose my manners there, it's fine. She pointed to the box that Xiao Ju had sent over. The clothes I'm going to wear today are all in there. Just pick one for me. Cui Jiao walked to the front of the box and picked up the tear gauze. She exclaimed, What a beautiful material. Madam, are these clothes worn by mermaids? Hien. Mermaids don't wear clothes. What, were the words mermaids written on their clothes? Why was everyone able to see it except for her? Hien said, I'm not going to wear this today. Help me pick out something else. It was 100 gold coins, at the very least. He had to wear it on the most important occasion to be able to afford this price. In any case, his body, hair and skin were all given to him by his parents. What he looked like depended entirely on his parents. No matter how much she dressed up, that was all she could do. It was just that she had not been a woman for too long. Her heart, which had always been calm, was actually a little nervous. Hopefully, it won't be too embarrassing. In the next room, Lin Shuanghe was half leaning on the couch and drinking tea. Xiao Ju sat in front of the table, wiping the evening zither. As Lin Shuanghe watched, he remembered that when he taught Hien how to play the zither, Hien's poor zither skills. Xiao Ju was also an elegant person. She was good at zither, chess, calligraphy, and painting. But how could Hien, a girl, play the zither and make such an unpleasant sound? If he went to the Cui family tonight, as Wen Yiyan, Hien would be asked to teach him a lesson. That would be fun. But, with Xiao Ju around, he should be able to turn the misfortune into a blessing. You keep looking at me. Second young master Xiao was very perceptive. Is something the matter? No, nothing. Lin Shuanghe opened his fan. Why are you so suspicious? I was just thinking. How beautiful would my little sister he look if she wore women's clothes? Xiao Ju stopped wiping the zither and slowly asked. Is there something wrong with your eyes? Don't you think so? Not at all. Lin Shuanghe was unhappy. You can doubt my medical skills, but you can't doubt my taste in girls. I saw little sister He at first glance. She was definitely a beauty. She was in the Liang province guards, so she naturally dressed up in a dirty way to not let anyone discover her identity. But with those facial features, if she wore women's clothes, it would be amazing. Besides, even if you're stubborn, you still like her, don't you? Xiaoju sneered. Which eye of yours saw that I liked her? I saw it with both of my eyes. Xiao Huijin, if you really hated her, why did you have to play the hero and save the beauty in the embroidery workshop today? You couldn't stand seeing others bully little sister He, right? Lin Shuanghe sighed again. But I don't blame you. I feel that little sister He is always a bit stupid when interacting with girls. She can't even see such obvious jealousy. Tonight, we'll be guests at the Cui family. You know how many people there are in these big families. If someone makes trouble because of this, you have to protect little sister He well. What does that have to do with me? She's your wife now, young Master Qiao. Besides, if someone from the Cui family makes trouble for little sister He, there's an 80 to 90% chance that it's because of you. With that face of yours, you can do harm to beauties, but our little sister He is unlucky. You know that this girl isn't scheming in the ways of the world, but you're different. Take good care of her. Take good care of her. He continued to blabber on and on. After talking for an unknown amount of time, the sky was about to darken. Lin Shuanghe finished the pot of tea, stretched, and sat up from the couch. He looked out the window. It's been so long. Is my little sister He done changing? Xiaoju had already finished wiping her zither, and was leaning against the table, pretending to be asleep. Hearing this, she opened her eyes and said indifferently, "Go and call someone." It was getting late, and Cui Yueji's people should be here soon. Okay. Lin Shuanghe stood up. Qi Wu and Fei Nu were guarding outside the door. Several people looked towards He Yan's room. Lin Shuanghe coughed lightly and knocked on the door. Young madam, are you done?" There was a flurry of sounds from inside, and Hong Qiao anxiously said, "Wait, madam, you forgot to put in the hairpin." Then Cui Jiao reminded her. "Earrings. You didn't wear earrings." It was the sound of something falling, and the people outside the room were speechless. Xiaoju slightly raised her eyebrows. Qi Wu whispered to Fei Nu, "Have you ever seen a man put on makeup? It's scary just thinking about it." Fei Nu, "Be careful with your words." Amidst the chaos, the door opened with a creak. Cui Jiao and Hong Qiao wiped the sweat on their foreheads and said, "It's done." The person behind the door walked out. It was the same face, but from a young man to a young woman. It was as if they were two different people. This was a young woman around 16 or 17 years old. She was slim and slender, and her pear-colored crescent phoenix tail dress was very tight around her waist. She wore a silk blouse of the same color. Her hair was combed into a deer bun, and there was a jade hairpin inserted diagonally. 2 strands of hair hung in front of her ears, making her ears look even more delicate. There were 2 white jade earrings dangling in front of her ears, and they were swaying. Her skin was very white, and there was a thin layer of makeup on it, making it even more delicate. Her eyes were excessively clear, and there was always a hint of a smile on her face. Her eyebrows were like crescent moons, and her beautiful eyes were bright. Her lips were a little red, and they were full of charm. The young woman's figure was petite, and she was beautiful and bright. However, there was a hint of heroic spirit between her eyebrows, which diluted her charm a little. She was really generous, valiant, and alluring. As a woman, she was slightly immature, but as a young woman, she was fresh, bright, and special. Everyone couldn't help but take a few more glances at her. The people outside the door were startled, and they didn't speak for a long time. He Yan was a little uneasy. She put her hand to her lips and coughed lightly. Is it not very suitable for me? I don't usually put on these things. It's beautiful." Lin Shuanghe was the first to applaud. "Young madam, you look like an immortal with just a little bit of makeup. When I opened the door just now, I was wondering which immortal had descended to the mortal world. When you opened the door, I realized that it was you." He Yan was speechless. Lin Shuanghe's flattery skills were comparable to the little shop assistant at the embroidery workshop. He just had to close his eyes and brag blindly. He didn't care if the listener could accept it or not. She looked at Xiaoju. This brother had to be more realistic. His words and Lin Shuanghe's words were probably the truth. He Yan asked Xiaoju, "How am I?" Xiao Ju glanced at her lightly. Not bad. He Yen felt relieved and said, Cui, eldest uncle's family, are they here yet? If they are, let's go. They're already waiting downstairs. Qi Wu said. The luggage is already in the carriage. Young master and young madam will stay in the Cui mansion when they're in Jiang. Xiao Huanqing and his wife, Wen Yuyan, were here to acknowledge their relatives. Since they were already in Jiang, there was no reason for them to stay in an inn. The few of them tidied up the things in the house and got off the carriage together. There were 2 carriages waiting downstairs. One was for Xiao Ju and He Yen, and the other was for the butler and the servants. Cui Yuezhi seemed to treat his nephew well. He was very considerate. He Yen and Xiao Ju got into the carriage and sat opposite each other. Xiao Ju was fine, but He Yen felt a little uncomfortable. She pinched the corner of her clothes and fixed her hair from time to time. Xiao Ju could not bear it anymore. She looked at her and said, Can you not move? Oh. He Yen responded and stopped moving. Her mind was a little messy. Nervous? He asked. Young master. He Yen leaned over and said seriously, Let me ask you a question. Speak. Do I look like a girl? Will I be exposed at Cui Yuezhi's house later? He Yen leaned close to her. Perhaps she had just washed up, but there was a faint fragrance of a young girl coming from her body. That pair of clear eyes stared straight at her. Her face was also very small, as if it was only the size of a palm. This kind of puzzled expression, if placed on a teenager's body, perhaps would be a little rough, but when placed on this outfit, it only left a delicate and charming look. Xiao Ju looked up and said calmly, Have you been dressing as a man for so long that your brain is damaged? She paused. You're a girl. I know that I'm a girl. He Yen explained, but I'm used to being a man in the Liang province guards. Occasionally, my actions become smooth. If there's anything wrong, you have to remind me. Don't worry. He pulled up the corner of his mouth. No one will think that this face is a man's. He Yen said. Then didn't you also not realize that I was a girl in Liang province? Xiao Ju did not pay attention to her. After a while He Yen reacted. She looked at him and said, Did you mean that I don't look like a man at all? That I look very feminine and very beautiful? Xiao Ju sneered. A girl would not ask such a shameless question. Then am I a girl or not? No. The carriage traveled for about the time it took to burn 3 sticks of incense before it stopped. The Cui family's carriage driver said, Young Master Qiao, Madam Qiao, we've arrived. Cui Jiao and Hong Qiao got off the carriage first and helped He Yen down. Since she was a young mistress, she naturally needed people to wait on her. He Yen stood in front of the Cui family's gate and sized it up. The houses in Jiang were built differently from the ones in Shuo City in the northern lands. The houses in Shuo City mostly had vermilion-painted doors, which appeared grand and dignified. Because Jiang was close to the water, the houses were mostly black and white. They were elegant and lively. The front door was carved with a picture of the water god, which gave it a different kind of life. The servants here were also dressed in gauze, looking cool and light. An old servant with grizzled hair and dressed in a jade-colored robe came forward to welcome them, smiling as he said, This must be young Master Qiao, and this should be Madam Qiao. This old servant is the Cui family's housekeeper, Zhong Fu. Sir has entered the prince's residence today, and the princess is staying for a banquet. I'm afraid that he won't return until late at night. This old servant is under Sir's orders to help young Master and Madam settle down. Young Master and Madam should rest well tonight. Tomorrow, Sir will host a banquet and treat everyone well. She's not here? He Yen was a little surprised, but then he sighed in relief. It was good that she was not here. He could familiarize himself with the Cui family's rules first, so that he could deal with whatever came his way in the future. Moreover, she was still not used to living with Xiao Ju as a husband and wife. It was good to have one more night to get used to it. He immediately smiled and said, Sure. The old butler sighed in relief. Previously, when Cui Yuezhi wanted to welcome his nephew back, he deliberately inquired about Xiao Huanqing and Wen Yuyan's temperament and habits. After all, they had not seen each other for many years. He only remembered that Xiao Huanqing was a playboy and his newly married wife was arrogant and domineering. Today he felt that the rumors were not true. This old servant will bring young master and madam to their room first. Zhongfu's gaze fell on Lin Shuanghe. This young master. He thought that he was Qiao Huanqing's friend or brother, so he was thinking about what room to arrange for him. Lin Shuanghe smiled. What a coincidence. You and I are in the same line of work. My surname is Lin, and I am young Master Qiao's butler. Zhongfu, don't be discouraged. Lin Shuanghe comforted him. Although the Central Plains is full of outstanding people, I belong to the category of people who are particularly good-looking. Not every butler can be born with a face like mine. Zhongfu smiled awkwardly. There were 2 rooms in total, not far from each other. Lin Shuanghe, Qi Wu, and Fei Nu lived in one room. He Yan, Xiaoju, and 2 servant girls lived in the other room. The 2 rooms were in the same courtyard. Each room was very large and was divided into an inner room and an outer room. The servant girls slept on the side couch behind a screen in the outer room. The inner room had a study room, tea room, and bedroom. He Yan had lived in the Liang Province Guard for a long time, but even Xiaoju's room in the Liang Province Guard was far inferior to this one. It was Cui Zhongqi's home after all. It was indeed extravagant. Zhongfu ordered the servants to bring Lin Shuanghe and the others to the next room. He brought Xiaoju to the main room and asked respectfully, "Young master, what do you think of this room?" Xiaoju looked up. "It's all right." This was called not bad, he Yan thought. Xiaoju, this rich young master, really grasped the way he did things perfectly. However, perhaps he wasn't pretending. After all, second young master Xiao was also really fastidious in the past. After seeing good things, looking at these again, naturally, they were ordinary. Zhongfu could not hide his surprise. His master had hoped that this nephew of his could return to his hometown and stay in Jiang in the future. However, he knew that Qiao Huanqing's family was now extremely wealthy and was afraid that he would look down on Jiang. So he renovated this room half a month in advance and moved in many treasures and antiques. This was to make Qiao Huanqing's eyes light up and feel that the Cui family was not inferior to the Qiao family. But now, it seemed that the young master did not care about these things. He did not give up and continued. "There is ambergris in the incense burner. If you like it, you can leave first." Xiaoju said lightly, "Prepare some food and send it over. My wife may be hungry and needs to wash up and eat. If there's anything, I'll call you." He Yan was shocked when he heard the word wife. But after hearing it, he really did feel hungry. After all, he did not eat much today. Zhongfu saw this and quickly left. He made a mental note. Young Master Qiao was arrogant and not easy to please. However, he was very considerate towards his wife. If he wanted them to stay, he had to start with his wife. After Zhongfu left, He Yan asked Cui Jiao and Hong Qiao to fetch some water. She had already bathed when she changed clothes at the inn today. Xiaoju had not yet done so. "Young master, you can go take a bath first. When the food is served, we can eat together." He Yan lay on the bed and rubbed his shoulders. "I'm exhausted after sitting in the carriage for a whole day." Xiaoju saw her like this and the corner of her mouth twitched. "Madam Qiao, you should sit properly." He Yan immediately sat up straight. He went to take a bath behind the screen in the tea room. Cui Jiao and Hong Qiao were chased out. The 2 girls did not know what to do and looked at He Yan. "Young master doesn't want us to serve him." Xiaoju was the same as He Yan. When she bathed and changed clothes, she really did not like to be around. He Yan waved his hand and said, "It's fine. He's just shy. I'll go. You must be hungry. Fei Nu and the others are just next door. You can go find them to eat. After eating, go rest on the bed in the outer room for a while." "But," Hong Qiao hesitantly said, "Madam doesn't need us to serve her?" He Yan waved his hand. "There's no need. We like to do things for each other as husband and wife. You can go and have fun." After all, they were still 2 young girls. When they heard He Yan's words, they became happy. They thanked He Yan with blushing faces and happily went to find Fei Nu and the others. In an instant, only the 2 of them were left in the room. He Yan stood up from the bed and walked around the room to look around. Just now, he only looked at the outer room and hurriedly glanced around the inner room. Now that he looked carefully, he realized that the decorations inside were quite exquisite. On the cabinet, there were red orioles and fragrant flowers. On the table, there were the 4 treasures of the study. In front of the small table, there was a chessboard. On the shelf, there was a pile of travel books. Under the tree by the window, there was a small pond with a few colorful fish swimming leisurely. At this moment, the sun was setting. Looking out of the window, it was really elegant and boundless. The people of Jiang were warm and unrestrained. The decorations were also like this. This kind of renovation must have been done specially for Qiao Huanqing. He Yen sighed in his heart. Cui Yuezhi was really sincere to this nephew of his. Unfortunately, the real Qiao Huanqing was a coward, and did not particularly want to meet this uncle of his. She closed the window and turned around to light the oil lamp. The lamp holder was in the shape of mandarin ducks playing in water. There was also a beauty lantern in front of the small table, illuminating the room. When he heard that Qiao Huanqing and Wen Yuyan had been married for less than 3 months, they could be considered newlyweds. Cui Yuezhi was so considerate that he even had people decorate the bed meticulously. The red curtains were warm, and the red silk bedding was embroidered with a picture of hundreds of children and thousands of grandchildren. Even the candles were red. There were dried longan fruits in the fruit bowl at the side. He Yen looked around and felt that this bedroom was really decorated like a bridal chamber. If she were to find a red veil to cover her head, and find a few people to join in the fun to shout a few words, it would undoubtedly be the wedding day. She and Xiaoju were going to sleep in a place like this tonight? She did not think of this at first, but now that she thought of it again, she felt uncomfortable all over. The light slowly climbed up the wall. He Yen saw that there seemed to be some kind of picture on the wall at the head of the bed. This place was near the water, and there were often murals of the people of Jiang worshipping the water god. It was very lively and interesting. He Yen also thought that this was what the painting was like. She kicked off her shoes, picked up the beauty lantern, and climbed to the head of the bed. She held the lantern and looked at it carefully. After Xiaoju took a bath, she put on her inner clothes and underwear and walked out. The moment she walked out, she saw He Yen holding the lantern and looking carefully at the wall. The mural? It was as if she was studying a treasure map. Her face was serious and serious. He paused for a moment and stared at her for a while. He Yen did not react. She was so engrossed that she did not notice his arrival. He was silent for a moment and walked over. He walked to He Yan's side, and bent down to look in the direction she was looking at. He Yen was lost in her thoughts when she suddenly heard a calm voice behind her. "What are you looking at?" Cough, cough, cough. She was shocked and almost choked to death on her own saliva. At the same time, Xiaoju also saw clearly what was painted on the wall. Little people who were honest with each other, and in all kinds of strange poses. His face turned cold and he said angrily, Yi Yen. Yes, yes, yes. He Yen was so frightened that he trembled. What are you looking at? This was supposed to be a question, but He Yen heard it as a question. He thought that Xiaoju didn't know what it was, so he answered timidly, Chun too, you haven't seen it before? Xiaoju's face turned ugly, and she was almost angry. I'm not asking you. Ever since He Yen was reborn, he had interacted with Xiaoju for so long. It wasn't that he hadn't seen Xiaoju angry before, but when he was angry, he was also cold and indifferent. It was the first time Xiaoju had directly released his anger like today. But why was he so angry? Was it because she did not call him when she was looking at the painting? I saw you bathing in there by chance. If you want to look at it first, then look at it first. Don't be angry. There's nothing good about this painting. The strokes are too strong and the characters are too ugly. If you like, there are many more paintings that are more beautiful than this. He Yen replied timidly, I'll find them for you. Xiaoju was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He sneered, Really? You've seen a lot of them? Not a lot. He Yen said. Maybe more than you. In his previous life, when he was Hirufei, many of his brothers in the tent secretly hid such treasure paintings. When they were bored at night, they would take them out and share them with everyone. He Yen was also forced to look at many of them. At first she was ashamed and angry. Later she became numb to it. In the end, she could comment on it without batting an eyelid. It had only been a few years. She was so proud of such unsightly words. She really did not know what was good for her. Xiaoju sneered in his heart. He suddenly pushed her against the wall and placed one hand on her side. The man's body was on top of her, and she could smell the familiar scent of the moon qilin. His gaze was as sharp as lightning, and there was a hint of frivolity at the corners of his eyes. His voice was hoarse and deep, and his dark eyes stared straight at her as he said lightly, "Then do you want to give it a try?"